This has nothing to do with Islam, but everything to do with the man that lost his way and ultimately killed his wife, his daughter, and then himself.
What Werner Herzog brought to this project for me was a constant reassurance that I wasn't completely crazy in pursuing this project. And the problem is, if you're looking to Werner Herzog for a reality check on craziness, you may be kind of in the wrong orbit. And in this project, I went through everything, and I had a small team of editors who were putting together the various sequences from Crowley's archive. So we just sort of saw what was there, and then we became familiar with this vast amount of footage. I call this the feel-bad film of 2017. There is no easy, tidy ending where everything sorts out, we all sing Kumbaya, and the Wookiee gets a medal at the end of the film. It's not that. It's meant to be chewed over. It's meant to be watched twice. It's meant to be dissected. It's meant to be analyzed. And anyone's analysis of what happened is probably as good as mine. What we've done is tried to present, in essence, the story in as true a fashion as we can, and let the audience or the viewer decide what they take away from it.
Welcome to another episode of the podcast for The Gray Stage. I'm Dan Hennon. We're joined here with Greg Fernandez Jr., the author of the book, The Gray Stage. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you, Dan. Always glad to be here.
Well, it's interesting. We've done this now once a month, going through your book. We're on year 3, Greg. This is episode number 25. We've done one per month for the last two years, and now we find ourselves on chapter 12. We've completed 11 chapters of your book by going through and reading it and having dialogue. Very interesting. Now we're on chapter 12. It's called The Sister of Comel. And we get into Sidra today. And for those of you following along in the book, it's page 105 in the soft copy of the book. So we'll start off with that. And what I'll do, Greg, is read the first couple of paragraphs, and then we could chat about it.
Sure, sounds good.
An interesting, once again, the book here, Gray Stage, by Greg Fernandez Jr., talking about the Crowley case in Apple Valley, Minnesota. We're starting off first with the section called The Presence. The Presence. We're not talking gifts here. We're talking presence with the E-N-C-E. Not the gifts at the front stoop, but presence. Because we get into some paranormal activity in this chapter. All this happens before the killings and whatnot. But I'll go ahead and get us started here. In 2011, Comel's sister Sidra stayed overnight at David and Comel's apartment. Now, they were living in Minneapolis in an apartment. They weren't in their Apple Valley home just yet, because I think they moved in to that home in December of 2013. So this is all prior to that. They were in an apartment. Sidra slept in Ranya's room. In the middle of the night, Sidra woke up when she heard Ranya crying and screaming. Whatever it was that Ranya saw in her bedroom that night, Sidra saw it too. Up until that point, Sidra did not believe paranormal activity was real. That changed when Sidra saw a presence standing by the door. She said, quote, "So I figured it was David," end quote. Sidra explained to me. "And I called his name," she says, "but it didn't move. It just stood there." "I freaked out," Sidra continued, "and ran out the door and went to their room, and I saw David on the ground praying. He said he felt the energy was off that night. He told us to go in the room, and he chanted some stuff from the Bible. And some of Ranya's toys went flying and hit the walls." So this is very interesting, Greg. Number one, we get that Sidra does not believe in paranormal activity, but now she does after this episode. She said she saw a presence. She believes it was whatever Ranya saw and was crying as well. Now Ranya would have been, two years old here?
Yeah, because she was born in what, 2009, August of 2009. So yeah,
So
about 2
very, very young. And they were living in an apartment. She saw a presence. And then David responded with, "Yeah, the energy was off that night. So he was not surprised by it, evidently. And he was on the floor praying. And I take that as I'm envisioning he was probably on his knees by the bed or something praying. Is that what you took from it, or did she say something else about being on the floor?
Yeah, that was pretty much what I took. I don't know if he was in the room, the living room, or somewhere. I wasn't really sure exactly where David was, but yeah, that he was on the ground praying. And I was even wondering if that's what caused things to kind of move. Like once he started praying, and why was he praying? He didn't know that he didn't see the presence, as far as we know. So how did he know what happened with Sidra? So some of the time, because she was just very brief about telling me all of this stuff, and this was all supposed to be included in a gray state. So this was some of the stuff that was taken out, according to what Sidra said. This was taken out of that film. So that would have been curious to see that in the film too.
Now, I think there's two things here. Is one is Eric Nelson in the film was going to use this as another reason that things were happening, paranormals act, this was just crazy things happening to the couple.
Right.
In other words, making them almost crazy. And so that was to help sell that. But we found out later that this has nothing to do with the murders or the killings, because we've got the actual evidence with the bullets and whatnot that took place. So this is just background information that helps the case and the story. Sidra was living with her parents in Hewitt, Texas. So she was up to Minnesota to visit and then stayed in the bedroom with her, but with Rania. But very interesting. Now, when things are flying off the walls and toys were flying off the walls, I'm assuming they were on the cupboard or on a shelf or something and flying around. That's not something easily made up or imagined. In my belief, that was real paranormal activity that took place in that room that night, regardless of what happened. If people believe it or not, that was a paranormal event, and very strange. Now, we know also that David was brought up and was Christian and believed in the Bible and whatnot, even though later we find out about all the Muslim angle and everything else. But he was praying, and then it started acting weird. So that all makes sense to me as far as events that would potentially take place. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
Right. Yeah,
But
it's pretty
it-
interesting that it all happened in 2011 too. I had thought for some reason 2013. So this is like what, 1 year, 2 years after David is out of service too.
He's
So
out of the service. They're married. They've got the baby, and they're staying they're living in an apartment in Minneapolis, and this stuff was happening. So who knows? But what surprises me here is the fact that David said that the energy seemed off. So it also seemed to me like he was not surprised at this. He was not shocked. He started chanting some things. That's maybe something that he's done in the past, and maybe it's something that he's dealt with or encountered, that he seemed to know what to do. So
yeah, I would have been freaked out. I've never seen anything like that, never experienced anything like that. So they all seem very calm. And even when David talks about some of that stuff in his journal, just very calm. Even when Kamel, except for the one time where she's kind of, a little bit freaking out or whatever, but most of the time in the two of the three clips that we have seen of Kamel talking about this stuff, she seems pretty calm too. It doesn't seem like this is the first, like you said, it doesn't seem like it's the first time this has happened. They kind of know what to do, and it's something that they just kind of dealt with.
yeah, it would be nice to know more of the background of that, but it's neither here nor there at the same time. But it's important to put in the book because it was put in the movie, and then later when the Alam family found out how it was being used and portrayed to make Kamel look crazy, and then they did not agree to go into that in the film and not to be part of it, they had to go back and cut this section out. Eric Nelson, that is.
Right.
And then they filled it in with something else, but this was evidently supposed to be part of the film. Interesting. Now it says, further on, it says, the Crowley family then moved across the hall to see if the presence would follow them there.
Mm.
Now, my only question there is does that mean that they moved and signed a new lease in the apartment building and got a new room and a new key and moved next door and actually lived in the a different room, a different unit of that apartment. I guess that's what it's saying, but it'd be nice to get information on that too. Because with presence and paranormal activity, mainly it's either in a building or in a room, and it does not follow. It does not follow you. So they knew once again right away to, hey, let's move and see if it follows us. And so they moved.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. This, I mean, I haven't read this in a while, obviously, but yeah, to see if it followed them there. So was this like the first incident that they had kind of had, or had they gotten to the point where they're like, you know what, we need to get out of this place and see if it follows us here, follows us to some other place. So that's pretty interesting that they actually moved across the hall. I would have moved out of the state or something, but
If something like that happened, yes. And for the most part, there is maybe, I don't know if you call them 3 types of paranormal things that may come into your house or home. Someone just acting nefarious, doing strange things. And then you may get a dark entity or something that's negative, evil almost. It sounds like almost like what this was. Or it may have just been a spirit, if you will, waiting to cross over. I don't know how you put it, but sometimes there's just things like that that go on in a house that are just doing strange things. This seemed like more evil or bad, malevolent, kind of an entity. So they wanted to leave and move. So that all makes sense. Now, Sidra said that she wasn't sure if it followed David and Kamel, but she did recall what her sister told her the last time they saw each other in Texas. According to Sidra, Kamel was now hearing whispers while she slept. Now, that could also be true. That could also be, I can't imagine that'd be made up. But if she told her sister about it, I would have to believe that Kamel thought it was real or legit. And this was after they moved, and she told her this in Texas. So there were things going on. It seemed like that these two, as a young couple with a young child, were dealing with these extracurricular events that would be hard on any young family.
Sure.
It's hard enough getting through with having a young baby and a young parent. So, but dealing with this kind of stuff, wow.
And the last time they would have met in Texas, that would have been 2014, right? That would have been June or
May or June of,
yeah.
think of the last year. So, but she says, quote, she would be sleeping, Sidra said of Kamel. Some things would whisper in her ear and tell her stuff like leave David or random things. And she would wake up angry at him, end quote. Now, this is very interesting. This very well could be true. Sidra telling the narrative here might be suspect when she adds in the phrase telling her to leave David and types of those things. These are pointing David as a bad guy once again. And we have to take a step back and say, is this Sidra saying this to lead us down that path? Or were things really being whispered and then she just added that in? Or was it legit? We don't know, because once again, you talked to her after 2016 or 2017, I believe, to get this information. So very strange. So they had the presence in the apartment, whispers in the ear when she was sleeping. Very strange. We also know that there was pot and marijuana being used, recreational or not, hallucinogens later in the house, whether it's mushrooms or whatever. So I'm just trying to think of how the others will perceive this when they hear this chapter. Will they dump it into the same bucket as these guys were drug users and hallucinating all the time, and they just couldn't differentiate between real and fiction?
Right.
That may be an answer they say, but it could certainly be true. Now, you go on to write at the bottom of page 105, that made me curious about the red man, quote, that was mentioned in an article related to the documentary A Gray State by Eric Nelson. According to Sidra, Eric Nelson's portrayal of the red man in A Gray State was inaccurate. Red man was just something they would scare Rania with when she wouldn't listen, Sidra said. It's just a little red man that comes up when a movie starts. end quote. So is this, when she's saying, is this when a movie would start, like a Disney movie or a Pixar movie or something? Did we ever find out what the red man was at the beginning of that movie?
Yeah, and I'll share that here too, for people that are watching this. So it's, if you look up Bad Robot Studios,
Yep.
and you'll see at the very beginning there's a quote unquote red man, I guess.
Okay, and that was common in the series, the television series Lost was always,
Oh, okay.
before each episode was always the bad robot. They would say bad robot. And
interesting.
the little red man would come up. So that was what they were referring to, is the introduction of that production company. Essentially.
Correct.
That was their logo.
And somehow that scared Rania. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I guess, yeah, that's odd.
And it may have been, we don't get the answer here, but it could have been something that was a joke meant to scare her as a joke, or meant to scare her seriously. I can't imagine them doing that to scare her seriously, but when she wouldn't listen. But it may have been one of those things that a parent would just say to get the child to listen. But what you were inferring was perhaps maybe this had something to do with the paranormal activities in the house, right?
Correct. At that time, yeah, at that time, I definitely thought that, okay, there's a red man. When I think of a red man, and I've heard other versions of a red man, it's a red person, a bloody person. So when they talk about the red man, that's what I was thinking. Oh, this guy covered in blood or something like that. Like, what the heck is going on? Like, why would you tell a kid that or anything? But
Yes.
this seems to be a little bit different. It's a robot. It's basically a robot who is red, I guess. But so that's all that I knew. I've never seen the TV show Lost. So when they show that in Lost, they actually, the red man said, or the red robot says something. The bad robot talks.
I don't know if it says it, but the voiceover in the background
Interesting.
says it in a child's voice. It says bad robot.
That's a little creepy to me. Okay, I
So
didn't know
that's
that.
probably all that they were talking about there. And we hear from Sidra that there was a presence in the doorway. She didn't say the color, but just said a presence. And I'd like to go back to one other thing. I think Sidra assumed when Rania woke up crying and screaming that Rania was seeing this presence. And perhaps she was. Now, we don't know what Rania was seeing or experiencing. Sidra saw it, and therefore she assumed that's what she was crying from. Is that accurate to say?
Yeah,
that she saw it, that she assumed. Okay.
That's what I thought. I mean, that's pretty much the way that I took it too.
Okay.
Was that the reason why Sidra woke up is because Rania saw this thing first and started screaming.
That is
So-
super creepy.
It really is, and it's like, well, where was David? Where was the father and the mother? They don't come into the room, so it makes me think, how quickly did all of this happen?
Correct.
And then all of a sudden, David is praying instead of going to comfort the screaming daughter. And maybe it's because they knew Sidra was there. Maybe it's because I could speculate
I
and
see.
speculate all day.
I
I don't
see.
know, but
But you're right. By the time she went into the bedroom, he was already on the floor praying,
right.
knowing something was up. But that is, I guess, creepy. But anyway, so we got the red man is what they use, is what they say to scare her. We don't know if it relates to anything like this, but that was the beginning of that production company's before our show started that they produced.
Yeah. So once I learned that, I was like, okay, I don't really think that I don't really think there's any between those two. Again, I'm just speculating here, but I thought that it was relevant to put into this book to kind of time, as far as the timeline. Like, if this would have happened in 2014, 2013, I probably would have put this later in this chapter, because this
Gotcha.
happened earlier. That's the reason why I put it at the beginning, not to try to make anyone seem, to try to influence anybody. But I also thought this was something very relevant from what Sidra was saying. And whether people want to believe it or whether they don't, whether they take it seriously or whether they don't, I thought that it was very relevant to put into this book. And I did struggle with that too. What should I put it in? My journalistic side was telling me yes. And then, other parts were saying no, because it's not really relevant. And it may, like you said, some people may take it and think, oh, well, here's more proof that David and his wife were crazy and dealing in spiritual stuff, that they dabbling in things that they shouldn't have been doing, which I still kind of am open towards, that maybe they were opening doors that they should not have opened.
Correct. When it gets to the occult and things like that, we do have that symbol, the Bohemian Grove
It's true.
item, in David's closet, whether he got that as a gift or whether he bought that and thought it was cool or was using it as a movie prop, we don't know, but it's still one of those things that you probably wouldn't be in possession of in the first place.
Right.
And he did study all different religions, including
true.
the occult and Satanism and everything. So he was well versed in all of those things, although it's safe to say that he was a Christian, but he was involved in learning because of his IQ level. He had a real depth of learning all of these things, and by accident could have tripped some of these things open, because that 2011 apartment is where the presence was. We knew that there was hallucinations in the Apple Valley home. Was it the same? I can't believe it would be the same, because that means it would have followed them. But were they just open to having spiritual type of things, paranormal things happen where they were, or after moving? Or was Kamel, were they experimenting with drugs, mind-altering things, and these things were popping up? Who knows? But it's strange, and I think it's good to have in the book the 2011 activity, along with moving into 2013 into the new house. And then they had that episode on Halloween night or end of October when she was seeing the hallucinations and woke up from the rapture sort of thing, and he started filming it. So
right.
things were going on in their relationship, regardless of where they lived, where they moved, and what they did. Things were happening. So I think it's all relevant still. And the daughter was exposed to it. This is a 2-year-old daughter, allegedly, potentially seeing this presence in the doorway back in 2011. Now, it ties into what you have next here, because it does tie into the case. Rania's crying, Greg writes here, is reminded me of a very curious incident in October of 2014. A supplemental report by Detective Jim Gummert explained that Rania came to school sometime during the school day, become very upset and tried to hide in a classroom, and the teacher found her and she found her cowering in a corner and crying and saying that she was afraid, so much so that she could not calm down enough and had to be sent to the office to calm down. That was the only incident that stood out to the school staff, according to Detective Gummert.
And that's another thing that was kind of like, is it tied? Is it not tied? But just looking for, at this point, I'm looking for anything that's kind of, and remember, I didn't have the journal. We didn't have the journal then, or else I probably could have included some of the stuff that was in that journal too. But at this point, I'm looking for anything weird, anything that kind of stood out. And the fact that this is documented, this is happening at school. I mean, these are all things that Rania is tied to. Everything that happens, even in Eric Nelson's film, Rania is always there. I haven't heard of any of these supernatural, spiritual, paranormal stuff, whatever, where Rania is not involved. So it made me wonder, is this thing following her? Now, as like you just
trying attached itself to her
for some reason, because as a 2-year-old, we know about how children can see angels. It seems like, from my research, from my personal, not my personal, but from my family's experience, the younger they are, they're more apt to see angels, and maybe to see other things too, to see the opposite of the angels, right? Demons, basically. So it made me wonder about these things. And this incident really stuck out to me when we first had these 94 pages of police reports. That's where this comes from. It really stuck out to me. Why would Rania be freaking out here? What was going on? This was in October. It's not really sure exactly when, so it doesn't line up with what was happening with Kamel in October. It's a strange thing to really happen. But and it's never really followed up on. Obviously, it's not relevant to Detective Gummert. It's not relevant to his case, really. He notes it, but he doesn't really make anything out of it after that. He's just putting it down there. And if this is the only thing that has happened, what is so special about October 2014? And then when we got this stuff in the journal and everything, you can see that this wasn't the only thing that was happening, as far as in the possible paranormal realm that was happening in 2014. I don't know if it's tied. I just thought that it was kind of relevant, and I figured I want to put this in there for people that may know about that stuff, and maybe they have some other views on it, some other comments on it. And
I do recall when this first came out, there were those suspecting that a child would only act that way if there was abuse or neglect or something at home. And I think they were trying to throw David and Comel under the bus at that point too, by saying something that would have startled the daughter, Rania, that much. There must be something going on behind closed doors. Was there abuse? Was there something? And then it was like, I think about a year later, where there was speculation that the brother, Dan Jr., was possibly abusing or molesting little Rania. And then we threw that out when we did the timeline, where whatever happened with David and Dan Jr. happened in August. Around the birthday party time, they cut ties, and the relationship was strained after that. And so this would have nothing to do with Dan Jr., but we did think at one time that there perhaps could have been something going on within the family there. But all we know is that something very, very serious took place in August between Dan and David, the two brothers, that severed their relationship.
Right.
And so this took place in October. So there was no evidence of any kind of abuse in the house. Dan was out of the picture, the brother. We don't know what else was going on. But if it was perhaps non-paranormal related and something related to abuse or something, there was really nothing going else on that time frame. You bring in the paranormal, and Comel has the rapture in October, the last week of October, I believe. And, who knows if this was tied or not. We did try at one point to get in contact with the Montessori school where Rania went to school there at the preschool. And they were hesitant on contacting them or doing anything with them. They didn't want to have any, but now here we are 7 years later. And I think, to reiterate, if anyone, either the director there or the teachers, would like to reach out, contact us to tell us more, it would be more on the lines of the things that we're interested in. Was this episode, for instance, did Rania say anything? Was she just scared and crying? Or was any words used or images that she saw that tripped her off? Because we have a whole history of the Montessori school where they had only positive things to say about Rania. Good student, got along well with others. The other students, the classmates liked her. The teachers liked her. She was smart, gifted, and everything we have from the Montessori school for preschool was very positive about Rania. This one thing stood out, and because it was so wild, I'll say, it's really why it stood out.
Yeah.
And then you bring it into the book here because of the timing. This is October, and whether it's connected or not, it's food for thought. As far as what could have happened or what it related to. But it'd be nice if we can get someone from that Montessori to come forward and reach out either by a instant messenger, email, text, something for the show or something like that. This is the kind of things we're looking for. We're not trying to point the finger at the Montessori for doing something wrong. It's to get a little more background on some of these instances. That's it, in a good way.
Right. Right. And I think one of the things that really stood out to me here is that she was hiding. She was hiding.
Yeah.
So it goes back to the first thing where she wakes up crying, and Sidra sees this presence. And I was wondering, okay, did Rania see this presence in her school? Because if she saw something in the school, then obviously this, whatever it is following her. It's
Now,
completely.
we don't know
following her.
if this took place like first thing in the morning. Sometimes if a child has a bad experience right before school or getting ready, they're kind of in a foul mood to begin the day with.
Sure.
And maybe that could have tripped something. But if this was 1 PM or 2
Which is
o'clock,
what it sounds like. That's what it sounds
sounds
like.
like it was just out of the blue in the afternoon. It
Right.
had nothing to do with anything. And she was having a successful day leading up to this. And then something sparked it. And that would be, if it was paranormal, could very well be the deal. Now, when she saw the presence that Sidra mentioned, that was 2011.
Right.
This is 2014. So it's, once again, food for thought. Would it be the same type of thing or something similar or something like it from 3 years earlier? And if so, would a 2-year-old baby at the time toddler even have a memory of that
That's a good
at the age
question.
of 5? Now who knows? And we know we've got those out there with those backgrounds listening to these kind of episodes, and we can get someone maybe to comment or something. Would they even remember a thing like that if it was once? Now, maybe there's recurring things over and over that we don't know about. But boy, something sure sparked her in that classroom. Enough so that she went and hid.
Right.
That's not just another boy or girl picking on her or being a bully in the classroom. That wouldn't draw that kind of spark of response like that. She kind of flipped out.
Yeah, I mean, from my view, like I was thinking, you would have to see something that would make you want to go and hide here. I don't know how people, have tied that to David being abusive or Kamel being abusive or anything like that. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. I never thought that made sense. The paranormal, obviously, when I read, when I learned more about it, it's like, that's the only thing that really makes sense, unfortunately. So I had to, I had to look at it.
Once again, if we heard from a teacher or the particular teacher that handled the situation or the director of the school about that incident,
yeah,
they may not have known about the previous paranormal activities that the Crowley family was going through, and maybe that would make sense more for them, because I am sure it freaked out the teacher themselves.
Good point.
By getting this kind of to elicit a response like this to a young 5-year-old girl. I bet it had an impact on the teacher itself, wondering what on earth could be going on. And maybe they don't know the experience with the paranormal, but it's something to consider nonetheless. Now, the last sentence, the last one here, paragraph, it goes on to say, sometime after the deaths of David, Kamel, and Rania, Sidra was inside the house where the killings happened. When we visited the house, said Sidra, we heard Rani's laughs in there, end quote. And that's how the section here ends. Now that, I don't have a personal problem with that either. I am quite sure that they did or would hear things like that. This is a big traumatic event. I wouldn't be surprised if Sidra did hear that. I'm sure she's not making it up. Is her mind playing tricks on her? Possibly. Did she hear laughs? Possibly. Or is more of that still lingering around? Who knows?
Yeah. And there's my timer going off there. But I do know, and this has come up many times, people have asked me this, because you were in the house. You have helped bring several mediums into the house. And one of the questions that I wanted to know was, did they hear anything? Because it wasn't just Sidra, it was other, the Gray State goons also saying, oh yeah, they heard something too. The fact that Sidra did it, that she heard it, was a little more credible, a lot more credible than some of these other people that have said kind of the same thing, where they hear children laughing and stuff like that. But with the mediums that you've spoken to or anything, did they report anything like that? Or can you tell us a little bit about what they also
just
reported?
to summarize quick? I went in there one time with the medium just to go through the house when it was open for sale with the real estate agent, and the gal that I went through with noticed no paranormal, no spiritual, nothing that heightened her senses, nothing dark in the house. And then another person said too, they got maybe some feelings of something, but nothing that really sparked their interest as far as an entity or something evil or demonic living in that home. Now leave that for what it's worth, but we did go through after it was cleaned up and redone and on the market for sale. So they didn't find anything. And I started putting a lot of this paranormal stuff to rest after that happened.
Yeah.
While at the same time, I do believe that those types of things exist. And I can't believe Kamel was making it up, or Sidra with toys flying off the wall. I believe that is probably what happened. But that was at the apartment. Who knows if they were hallucinating or whatnot, but I don't know. We know that the killings themselves, as far as the evidence that was portrayed, had nothing to do with paranormal itself. So we can, I think, safely rule that out. But it's interesting enough with the number of occurrences of strange things that happen. That's very important for the backstory for those following this case and those reading the book, that it does come into play in their lives.
Yeah. And then last thing, I guess, before we wrap this one up, I still get a lot of questions, a lot of people asking about those videos that you do have where we talked about the whole mediums. We did at least 2, I think. Do you have those backed up anywhere? I've looked in some of my replays. I may have.
I've got all of my videos on the Crowley case were on YouTube and backed up. And when YouTube took down my channel last a year ago or something, they took down everything and deleted everything and removed my content, my channel, everything. It's all gone. Now I've got a couple of hard drives in my possession that I backed everything up on, but I have not gone through and started reloading those things back up onto my Rumble account.
Okay.
Which I want to do someday, but I've got a series of a handful of other investigations that are all commingled in there. And I do need to re-upload those.
Okay.
But those are saved. They are backed up. We do have those, but they're not available on the internet right now.
Okay. Well, that's good to know that someday they will be, because I still get many questions about those videos. They want, hey, do you have Dan's, video about the whole mediums? And I've looked and I was like, man, I don't know. They could be in a replay somewhere, but I don't have them backed up.
What I'd like to do on my website, uglytruth.info, under the David Crowley topic, is a list of all the videos that we've done. If you click those links there, they're all dead links now, but I'd like to re-upload those onto my Rumble account and then just fix the link and then have an announcement saying they're all ready to go one day. Right now, that's not the case, but I do have to organize those and upload those, but I do have them backed up.
Excellent. Can you tell people where they can find you on Rumble?
It's, let's see. I think it's just Dan Hennon at Rumble, DM Hennon at Twitter, and my website, uglytruth.info, and Facebook under Dan Hennon. But YouTube is down. It is gone. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't a suspension. It has been removed. So none of those, you're going to go to dead links on all those YouTube things, but I'll be putting those up on Rumble here, hopefully under a replay or when you group all these videos together under a playlist. I'd like to put those all under a playlist for this Crowley case in particular and get those up there.
Awesome. Yeah, I've kind of made my venture into Rumble, Getter, things like that. So I'm kind of looking at other things. I think Rumble is the best alternative, and I haven't been censored there yet. So
yes, that's I think the way to go. But I'll have an announcement when those are all up and ready to go. Probably, hopefully, this spring or the summer, but those will all be back up on my.
Awesome. Thank you, brother. What about your podcast that we never talk about? You still doing that?
The podcast, the weekly podcast?
Yeah, the weekly podcast. We never talk about that. I think we should a little bit here.
Yeah, I do a weekly radio show on Eternal Affairs Media, EA Truth Media, and it's a weekly current events podcast found on Podbean under, you can do a search for hashtag Eternal Affairs Media or hashtag EA Truth Radio. And I do a 30-minute podcast summarizing a summary of the week's events in the geopolitical realm of things. Politics, worldwide updates, coronavirus, things that are happening. And we go over things that are in the news that shouldn't be as far as the distraction, but I like to focus on the things that aren't in the news, but should be. That are very big, very important news, but they're not, of course, on the mainstream media. And so the typical person in the public isn't aware that these things are going on. So we cover things like that. But it's a 30-minute podcast found on eternalaffairsmedia.com.
Yeah, which I found great. I work Monday through Friday, so it's nice to just have that one where I can just kind of look at, and you pretty much cover everything that I would want to research, would want to kind of get a quick update, and you make it so easy that it's like, okay, if I want to look at further things, I can go and research that. But it's just a great breakdown of different things. There's so much happening right now.
It's usually 15 to 20 bullet points per week of things that are going on, and I think the general public hears about maybe 5 of them.
Right.
And so it's and they're all archived out there also to go back and listen to. And that's also a free subscription as well. You can subscribe to that, but it's free. You don't have to pay for that service.
Awesome, brother. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
All right, have a good day. I've got nothing more here for you, Greg.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. And we'll come back next month and we'll go through the next section here. Guilty as charged.
Awesome. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, brother.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Ross from Planet X Filmworks channel on YouTube and the Zodiac Files True Crime series. Check it out, and shout out to Greg and the Gray Stage channel. Their content is amazing.
Are you interested in the paranormal? Murder mysteries, cryptocurrency, and thought-provoking interviews? Then check out Crypt-Rex I've Been Thinking on YouTube, or every Monday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Studio A at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Welcome to the Crypt.
Minnesota filmmaker and United States Army veteran David Crowley was accused of murdering his wife and daughter before taking his own life in December of 2014. The Apple Valley Police Department suspects the bodies were inside the Minnesota home for 3 weeks after they were found by neighbors on January 17, 2015. Within 24 hours of finding the bodies, authorities assumed this was a double murder-suicide. The culprit was deceased, and the public was not in any danger. Initially, authorities did not see a bullet hole in the living room ceiling or a bullet in the living room carpet. These were two of the most important items in the case, as they were tied to David Crowley and his daughter. It was only after investigators were told of their existence that they returned to the crime scene on 2 separate occasions and retrieved 2 spent rounds. What did authorities find in the Crowley house that proved David Crowley murdered his wife and daughter and then killed himself? Without a motive and with the absence of guilt, the case was closed with the status of exceptionally cleared. If David is truly guilty of this crime, then authorities should be forced to prove their theory. The Gray Stage exists solely because of the official conclusion as stated on page 92 of the Apple Valley Police Reports PDF. With the conclusion of the review of digital devices, Detective Brian Bone reported on October 7, 2015, there is no other information available for further investigation. Throughout this investigation, the AVPD has not discovered any information or evidence that shows anybody but David is the perpetrator of these crimes, including the killing of his wife, child, and himself.
A simple truth. It really is this simple. Either you believe David Crowley is innocent or you believe he is guilty. If you believe David Crowley is guilty, you are wrong. If you believe David Crowley is innocent, you are right. It really is that simple. A United States Army veteran is dead. His wife and his 5-year-old daughter are dead. A thorough investigation would only conclude with authorities admitting they lacked evidence to support their accusations. If authorities were to admit the case remains unsolved, they would also have to admit that the public may still be in danger. I am not able to solve this case. My interest is in forcing authorities to admit David Crowley is innocent. The reason they refuse to talk about this case is not because they are confident of David's guilt. They lack confidence in their allegations. Their department wishes to move on, but they are only lying to themselves. They must know the simple truth, and they need to publicly admit this. Their credibility depends on it now. The unspoken truth is that David is innocent until proven guilty. Why are authorities running from this simple truth? How long do they think they can run for? You cannot run from God. You cannot run from your nightmares. And you cannot run from the facts. Why would anyone want to? What could possibly motivate someone to try? If you cannot prove David Crowley guilty, then he remains innocent. It's as simple as that. So the resistance we face is disgusting. If David was guilty, the evidence would be right in our faces. If David was guilty, resistance to our questions would not exist. If David was guilty, facts would be evident. There are no facts to prove David guilty. There are only facts which prove David innocent. Hence the resistance to getting justice for David Crowley and family. Who cares? Do the people who closed this case and decided to not speak about it ever again really care? Do the friends who accused David Crowley of being guilty days after his body was found really care? Perhaps they only care about spreading the accusations of David's guilt instead of researching the facts of this case. They don't seem to care about the facts which prove David innocent. Truth is a simple thing. Justice does not die. Facts prove David is innocent.
Welcome to another episode of The Gray Stage book. My name is Dan Hennon, joined today with Greg Fernandez Jr. and Sophia. We're on episode number 24. Chapter 11, we'll be covering. Chapter 11 is called 21 Questions with Officer Gummert, Part 2. This is, Greg, this is our second year, really our anniversary here. Happy New Year's, by the way, to everybody.
Happy New Year.
2 years we've been doing the podcast, one per month, for the last 24 months on the book, The Gray Stage by Greg Fernandez Jr., basically turning this into an audiobook. Are we not?
And I really hope that this podcast really helps people understand more about this case. I still feel like there's many people that have just not heard about this case. And once they do, we want to make sure that they're able to get access to all of the documents, all the photos, everything that they might need, and including having it in this podcast version here for people who would rather have it in a podcast version. Yeah, I'm looking forward to 2022, and this is a new thing. We're trying out Zoom here, and so far it looks pretty good.
And once again, for those following along, this is the book. We've done a podcast on each of the chapters so far, basically reading every single line of the book and then talking, taking some time off and chatting about it, and having some discussion. Like you said, I've also learned something every single podcast that we've done. We'll be about halfway done with the book, Greg, after today's episode.
Oh, wow. Oh, good to know.
So we're right at the middle, 200-page book, roughly. We'll be at page 100 after today's show. So maybe we'll get 2 more years out of this, depending.
Very cool. And we got a cat cameo. All right.
Yes.
See, I love Zoom. Yeah, that's awesome.
So we did chapter 11, the 21 questions for Officer Gummert. We finished up last episode on part 1 with question number 12. And today we're going to start off with question 13. And for the listeners out there, Officer Gummert is the detective sergeant of the investigation unit at Apple Valley Police Department. So really the head of the unit that covered this investigation. And rather than talking to one or two of the detectives, you were able to send the questions directly to the sergeant, Officer James Gummert. And he was able to, because he had promised you in the past he'd get back to you on this once the case was closed. And certainly enough, he did get back and he was able to answer these questions. And so thank you once again, Officer Gummert, for getting back and following up. We'll start off today with question number 13. Question 13 starts off with the question, are there images from January 17th, 2015 that show a bullet hole near the living room light? His answer was yes. This is controversial, but I'll jump to that next question as well. Question number 14. Did you see the bullet hole in the living room ceiling on January 17th, 2015? Question mark. His answer, I saw it. Unknown of exact date. So the question here that Greg's asking for the listeners out there is, the bodies were discovered on January 17th, 2015. The three dead bodies of David, Kamel, and Rania all died gunshots on the 17th. The bodies were discovered and taken away. It wasn't known until February 18th, I think, of the month later, that there was a bullet hole in the ceiling. And so what we're getting here is to try to get it out of Officer Gummert that, did they actually know that there was, now that there was no bullet here, a hole in the ceiling on January 17th, but in fact, the crime scene was altered and was put there later. Now, I have no way to prove that, but this is kind of what we get for the answers. What do you think of the answers on both of those, Greg?
Number 13 to me is a big crucial one, because I want it on record that they see it on January 17th, that somebody sees it. He says, are there images of it? He says, yes. In the police reports, it's a little more vague. It's like, we saw it, but no, the way that the police reports read, it sounded like nobody saw it on January 17th. So here we have finally someone here saying, yes, there are images that show it. And really, if you look at the police reports, the way that it's phrased is kind of like, we have images after we looked for it, right? So it wasn't like it needs to be clear. Nobody saw it on January 17th. Nobody saw it on January 20th when they went back. It was only seen, this bullet hole in the living room ceiling was only seen after police were told about it by Chris Klein. That's it, or else they would have never known. It would have never came up, basically. So that is a huge deal. Then we asked for, I think in the last year or so, right before the COVID thing happened, I asked for the image. I wanted to see, okay, you guys say you have the image. Where is the image? I will add in the photo of the image that they give us. It is one of the photos that we've had. It is the only photo taken from about the kitchen island, and it shows the living room ceiling, kind of where that bullet hole is. That's the only photo that we have. Now, that is the one that we have is a BCA photo. And the Apple Valley Police told us that it was a Apple Valley Police photo. So there's a little kind of strange thing there that's going on. So maybe they have the same photo, but the photo that they sent us is one that we already have. It's the only one that shows the possibility of a bullet hole in the living room ceiling. And I'm sure everybody can look at the image and you can decide for yourself if you believe that there is a bullet hole in that living room ceiling. I kind of lean towards that there is a bullet hole in that living room ceiling on January 17th, but I have not done extensive research or extensive, really looked at it and really dug deep, got some good software to really see, okay, is there a bullet hole from what I see? And they circle the area where they say that the bullet hole is. So I will add that into this podcast for the people that are watching this on video.
One thing just to wrap up, for the newer listeners that are out there, we did receive all the crime scene photos taken by both the Apple Valley Police Department and the Minnesota BCA And they take images of that home of almost every square inch of that house for the crime scene photos. And when we didn't get one of that hole, that's what prompted Greg to say, did you know it? Were you aware of it? Basically, do you have a photo that shows it in the background, for instance? Because no one had a photo of it up close and personal. If there was a crime scene bullet shot hole through the ceiling, you would have an up close, different angles of that, maybe a trajectory marker of something. And so that does not exist. It does exist a month later. But where we got Gummert and the Apple Valley Police Department kind of hung up where they couldn't know how to answer the question is, they said they saw it on the 17th. And so he has to answer yes. And the next question he goes, I don't know the exact date. And then at first they sent you the photos of the ceiling and they were wrong. And then he said, no, I want the photo of that hole. Well, I think he sent another one. No, it's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the ceiling hole. And so what they did was attempt to push you around a little bit to placate you, Greg, I think.
Yeah.
To push it, kick the can down the road a couple months until finally they got this photo, which I think that they had to find to come up with now to save the credibility essentially, because it does have an image, but they still, if a crime scene was, if they saw it, there would be a crime scene photo of it. What we're getting from them is a photo of the hole in the background of another image in the background. And you got to zoom in to try to see it. So that's the point of contention here in this question is that they did miss it on the 17th. And they're really concerned about their credibility, Apple Valley Police. And that's why they have to really back into the answer that they did see it and they were aware of it. But they had to look high and low to try to find an image that just showed it potentially in the far background in the distance. And that's the one you're talking about now.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up. You're right. I totally forgot about that. When this first happened, the first image they sent us was from February 18th, right? When they re-entered the home and took photos. And like, yeah, here's the photos. No, that's not the photo. That's not it. And the second time they sent a photo of the basement ceiling, and again it was like, no, that's not what I'm asking for. Like I had to really hopefully I still have those emails saved somewhere, but I really had to make it very specific for what I was asking for, et cetera, et cetera. COVID happened. We had to wait maybe another year or so to get the actual photo. Finally, I forget who it was. Sophia, what's the lady's name at Apple Valley? I want to say Beth, but I don't think that's right.
It's Steph.
Steph. Yeah. So I think it was Steph who finally sent that image over. It seemed like she was just kind of tasked with it. And that's where the compartmentalization kind of, we really see that here with a lot of the people that are working for the Apple Valley. It's like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is really doing here. Yeah. And, it's like you pointed out many times, Dan, it's a very small police force there, and they're not used to this type of thing, et cetera, et cetera. So anyways, that's a great point. It's kind of like they didn't really know. And then the only image that they have, the one image that they have is the one from very, very far. Yeah. So that is more further proof they were not looking for a bullet hole in the living room ceiling. Everyone knows that. We all know that. Maybe for legal reasons, they're very cautious about saying that, but there has never been one person in law enforcement who has ever stated that they have seen that bullet hole in the living room ceiling on January 17th. None, because they know that if they did, it would be a lie because nobody saw it that day. And
And the other thing, just for me to wrap up, the other thing that we were looking for with this question, I think, Greg, was for Gumbert to come clean and just say, we didn't see it. We saw it when we were told about it later. We have a photograph of it then. And no, we didn't. We're looking for just honest answers. We didn't ask the question to back him and paint him back into the corner to lose his credibility. We just want the honest truth. And your answer, the answer that he gave you, Greg, was so telling on multiple fronts. Number one, he didn't know about it, but he couldn't lie And he certainly wasn't going to say, hey, I admit it, we didn't see it. That's going to make them look bad. And the police department is so worried about the reputation. We're to the point here now where we're looking to see the facts and just tell us the truth. What if you didn't see it, you didn't see it.
Yeah.
It is what it is. You made a mistake. We're not going to grill you for that, but they are afraid of that. Also, like you mentioned, perhaps legal recourse. So they have to watch what they say and how they answer things, because that could make them look very negligent in their investigation.
Well, there's also the BCA video of the crime scene from that day. And even on that video, you don't see the bullet hole. They don't even look at the bullet hole. They pan throughout the living room. You see the couch. They blur out the area where the bodies are. They go downstairs. They walk through the rooms, the kitchen, everything. No bullet hole.
And when you walk into that house, it's generally almost right above your head. It's not in a strange, inconspicuous location in that house where they may have perhaps missed it. It was right in the entryway in the living room where the bodies were found. You couldn't have missed a bullet hole in the ceiling. So that's why this is such an important piece of information.
Yeah, and they're also moving things. So, they moved that recliner, they moved the dog cage. So they're moving things. They moved the whole Christmas tree. So they're moving things right underneath where they say that this bullet hole was. So, I mean, that's, I think it's still, for me at least, I'm still 50-50 on was there, I actually maybe 60-40. I do kind of lean more towards that there was a bullet hole there on January 17th. And I know actually William has also joined us here too. And I know Catherine has done this. William, I don't know if you've done this too. Sophia, you may have, I'm not sure, but kind of taken that one photo that we have, I believe it's BCA 4888, if I remember correct, or 4488, something like that. I'll put that up here, and kind of zoomed in and really looked at it. Obviously with the software that I have, the zoom is not that great. It's very pixelated. So, for me, it was, I could not prove that there wasn't a bullet hole there. And I do see a little space where it looks like there may have been a bullet hole, but it's so small. I mean, we're talking about a 40 cal bullet. It's, going through that ceiling. It's not going to be that big. But maybe William, have you done some extensive software?
Oh yeah.
Looking at that, and what do you think about? Do you
There
think
was a hole. There definitely was a hole. Yeah,
Okay.
I enhanced the hell out of it, and there was a hole right there.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm leaning towards. But I mean, whatever people want to think, the main thing for me, well, that is a pretty big thing actually, if there was or there wasn't a bullet hole. But what we know for sure, what is 100% factual, I think, even without that image, is that nobody saw it on January 17th and January 20th either. So I think that is a big point here.
It's BCA 448.
4408.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I always
And-
get that wrong. 448. Thank you.
And in that one, you can see where there's like a hole right above the kitchen table and chandelier that's right there above the kitchen table.
Mhm.
And then, but honestly, on my phone, I can't see the hole that's where they said it is by the front door. I'm going to have to put it on the laptop and look at it that way through Coral and everything.
Yeah, it was a little frustrating that it took them so long to get that photo, and I was even a little frustrated because we had done several shows where we zoomed in on that area and said, hey, if they're going to give us an image that shows the bullet hole, here's the one that they should give us, and that's exactly the one and the only one that they've ever given us. So that's kind of interesting, that they would just have that one there, but yeah, I don't know. Anything else on that? What about 14, question 14, William? I don't know if you saw that one, but did you see, we asked Detective Gummer, did you see the bullet hole in the living room ceiling on January 17th? He says, I saw it, but unknown of exact date. We're just talking about how nobody has ever claimed to have seen that bullet hole on the 17th.
It almost seems like he's kind of avoiding saying it was on the 17th. I think he saw it later. It was probably through photos. I don't think he actually saw it in person. Or if he did, he was just completely trying to remain, playing dumb, essentially, I think is what's going on here.
It has the feeling of me of a little legalese, little answer to that from an
Bingo.
attorney, how that is crafted. He's not lying, but he's also not telling the truth. So.
Right. It's all about semantics.
Yeah, I mean, how could you not know what date that you saw it on there? You have to know what date you saw it on there.
I'll go to question 15. And also, by the way, welcome, William, to the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
We have we're on chapter 11, part 2 of the questions to James Gummert. Question 15 is this. Was the Department of Homeland Security or the FBI involved in your investigation, or were they conducting their own investigation? The answer from Gummert is not contacted, no investigation. I like the way you worded that, Greg, because it's very direct. There's no way to get around that. And we've heard rumors that the FBI was involved. We've heard rumors that the DHS was involved. And he says, point blank, no. The answer was no to either one of them. Now, we got Mason Hendricks on record saying that the DHS is involved. I think Sean Wright's on record saying that the FBI is going to have you under a microscope. All these things that now, because of Gummert, if Gummert's telling the truth, then Mason Hendricks and Sean Wright are lying. If Gummert is lying, we've got other issues. But I'm guessing that he is telling the truth, and these guys are not being truthful. So anyway, that kind of clears the air on this whole Department of Homeland Security, FBI, the federal. A lot of people thought, was it being investigated at the federal level? And this eliminates that now at all. Any comments on that one, William?
Well, see, that's where I'm kind of a little up in the air on this, because I don't know if you guys have done any digging on Mason Hendricks. I've been digging on that a lot. This guy's got ties to all sorts of political ongoings. I don't know if you guys have seen his connection where he was photographing and filming the Kenosha crap that was going on. He was there. Thing is, it's why was he there? How was he getting informed of these things? It's not just paying attention to, these other groups and stuff. This guy, he's got connections. Sean Wright's the same way. It's also, I don't know if you guys had heard the latest Tim Pool cast where he actually got a shout out from Luke Rudkowski, I think his name is.
Yes.
See, so that to me, this guy seems more like a plant, if anything else. I think both Sean Wright, and this is just my thoughts on this, my opinions, of course. I'm not making any accusation, but but it feels really like Mason Hendricks and Sean Wright are just plants, because they just seem like a little too connected to government agencies. And when looking at this, if they're saying things like, oh, DHS is involved and the FBI could potentially be involved, I mean, I'm not going to completely take it with a grain of salt. I'm going to be looking at, well, why do they say this? And if it's being investigated at a federal level, then there's something else going on here, because that's just the way the police are throwing this. It's in the direction of, well, it's just a homicide and a double suicide, double homicide and a suicide. But the thing is, that would never qualify for federal investigation unless there's something else there. Right. Point. So when it comes down to it, I mean, if they're saying this, I say we at least look into it. We should not just fully just take them with a grain of salt. I mean, even though they do prove consistently that their story is never the same thing, between Sean Wright and Mason Hendricks, they're telling not entirely two different stories, but they're telling two different stories here. Then you've also got the police narrative. I mean, what's got more relevance? And we know all three of those things don't have any relevance at all. So why is it being spun the way it's being spun? So,
well, that's what I wondered. Why even mention the feds? Why even mention DHS? I felt like it was just kind of to scare me from not looking into it, almost like like a veiled threat. And I think there's probably many other people out there that those two goons have contacted and told the exact same thing to kind of say, oh, well, I don't want to be involved in that. You know, I don't know. It's just, that's the only thing that I can think of. Why would you even bring this up? Why would you even mention this?
Right.
That's really weird. So I was really glad that Gummert was able to answer this question. And like Dan said, kind of put that to rest. I mean, Gummert has no reason to lie. He's not under oath, so he can lie if he wants to. You know, he did not have to even take the time to answer these questions. I do believe that he had to get clearance. I'm sure you guys do too. He had to get clearance on these questions too. So it's not really just 21 questions for Detective Gummert. It's really 21 questions for Detective Gummert and his higher ups. So.
Oh yeah.
What I liked about his answer on this one was that it was direct. It wasn't crafted a certain way. It wasn't any legalese about it. He didn't try to weasel his way out of answering the question. It was a simple no, which I appreciated.
Yeah, good point there. Not contacted, no investigation. Pretty straightforward there, I would say.
Which makes sense. I mean, that would make sense. But like I said, if these other guys are saying something here with their connections, I say we at least look at it, just because, you know, could there be something there? Because look at all the connections we've got with the fraternal organization, with police officers at the AVPD and their connections there. And then you've also got other things going on there, you know, with the drug trafficking and things like this. Then you got the Fort Hood thing going on. I mean, there's a lot going on here. I don't think we can just afford to just, you know, oh, okay, you know, grain of salt is these guys are, you know, telling two different stories here, and then the AVPD's got their narrative. I mean, I still think this is something worth looking at.
Sure. How deep do you think it's worth? I mean, what could be done? Like, maybe you don't want to talk about that here on a public show here, but I mean, that's kind of the other question is, you know, are they just trying to send us into a tailspin, you know, drive us down another rabbit hole or something like that? Exactly. Or is there really something to it?
There very well could be. You know, there's a lot of reason to speculate that there could be something going on. You know, just the big one I like to look at here is when it comes to finances, which, Dan, we should definitely talk finances. We got to get on that one. But when it comes down to it, it's why the 50,000 was that pulled out? You know, why are these guys saying there's something going on? I mean, especially as they're not coming out and saying, oh, we're the FBI, you know, and they're not posing as anything. So it's not like they can really get in trouble for that. But the fact is, could they be just trying to scare people off? It's definitely a possibility. I can't rule that out. But at the same time, we have to be looking at their current affairs, what they're currently doing, right?
Sure.
Sean Wright and the Luke Rudkowski, and we know that whole We Are Change thing, there's something else there, right? We know there's that all these different patriotic organizations were all infiltrated. We know that. And now the FBI's got, you know, Patriot Front, all this other kind of stuff. So we know the FBI has done some really, really shady crap. We also know the CIA isn't above that either. We know the DHS isn't, ATF. None of these organizations are clean. They've all got tons of blood on their hands. And they do a lot of shady things. It's government. We got to go and assume they could potentially have a hand in this. And if this is at a federal level, look at, for instance, with not to get too political on this, but with you know, Joe Biden sending the FBI to go look at Project Veritas over a damn diary that had some things, you know, from his daughter. We have to consider why would they not overreach? Right then, we have Biden doing now. We know Obama was doing the same kind of stuff. He was doing a lot of overreach as well. So why wouldn't it be possible? You know. Yeah, sorry about the political ramble.
That's all good. No, that's good. That's a good point. I mean, it's also possible that just because Gummert doesn't know that there's anything going on, they could be doing something, you know. Yeah. They could be doing something under the books or whatever you want to call it. But I agree with Dan. I'm very happy the way that Jim Gummert answered this question. You know, right. It is very different from a lot of the other answers. It's pretty straightforward. So maybe he just doesn't know about anything that's going on. We do know that somebody contacted the FBI federal agent Travis Yarborough, I believe, and that was to get David's to get his fingerprint. So technically, at some point, they were contacted, or somebody contacted. That could have been the BCA though, not the Apple Valley Police. I have to go back and look at who actually did that. I believe it was the Apple Valley Police detectives though who did that. So, anyways.
Well, but I mean the thing. Oh, sorry.
If you look at this logically, Detective Gummer would know if the FBI or Homeland Security is looking in on his investigation. If Sean Wright and Mason Hendricks supposedly know, Detective Gummer would know. So,
Well, I mean, if it's under the table, not
Unless-
necessarily.
unless they're involved with one of those organizations.
Right.
So- and they knew something that the Apple Valley PD would not know. But then, anyway. So,
Yeah, and I can see that as a good reason to keep looking into it, because obviously if Sean Wright knows something that Detective Gummer doesn't know, then yeah, there's a big problem, and that's gonna say a lot about Sean Wright and his involvement in trying to steer people away from looking at this stuff, just from asking questions.
Right.
I mean, that was his main goal, was to
Mhm.
get people to stop asking questions, to just be silent, while they just went off and said whatever they wanted to say, smeared David, did whatever they want to say about David, but we're all just supposed to sit here and just take it. And there are many people that did, because they have invested time into their radio shows, into what they're doing, into their contacts. There's a whole network of all of these guys, and a lot of people didn't want to ruin those chances. And that's pretty much what I was threatened with. I really don't care. You know, I mean, I'm not worried about being popular, unpopular, whatever people say. It does not matter. I mean, this is just such a slam dunk case. That it's just like, if you can't see this, you are not a credible person. If you just think that David Crowley is guilty, I mean, this guy contacted me, I believe January 23rd or something like that. Now, this would have been a couple days after they found the bullet that rolled out of a living room carpet. You know, nobody's talking about the bullet in the ceiling. Nobody's talking about item 57, any bullets tied to David Crowley. But it was like, when that came out, that there was a cleaning company that was cleaning the house on January 20th, and a bullet rolled out. It really seemed like things really heated up there. It was like, wow, okay, first they have the rear slider open. That was a huge one that came out on day one. Dan, I think that was one of the first things posted into the Justice group. Really, somebody posted that audio. We grabbed that audio.
That audio file, someone
Yeah.
grabbed it and posted it. Yep.
Yeah, and it was like, wow. And then you had that, and then once item 57 came out, I mean, those are three huge things. That's way before any of the DNA or any of that other stuff that would conclusively prove David didn't do any of this. And so yeah, this is what someone who wants to cover things up would do, is they would start contacting people and start telling them, don't talk about this. Not even say, hey man, you know what? David's guilty. Don't worry about it. You know, we got it covered. The confidence in Sean Wright was not there. It was more of a fear, from what I said. Like, he was scared of something.
Right.
And it was like, we need to keep this quiet. We don't want to talk about this. It was not like, hey man, I'm really looking out for you. He seemed scared of something, and he wanted me to be scared of whatever that was too. That's the feeling that I got when I talked with him.
Well, see, I recently just reached out to Luke Rudkowski and asked him why he was praising Sean Wright, especially when, there's a connection to the Crowley case here. And I asked him, what do you actually firmly believe? Is David Crowley guilty, or is he innocent? And I haven't got a response yet. I don't expect to get one, but I've been on top of that also on Twitter, calling him out, just publicly, like, look, this guy's kind of a fraud here. This guy, he doesn't stand for justice at all. He doesn't care. I was like, chances are he's probably a plant himself. It just seems too weird. Why is this guy, who's part of this organization that Sean Wright's attached to, that, and you know that there's going to be some attachment to David there. Plus, I mean, wasn't Luke Rudkowski also in the Rise as well?
Yeah.
See,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I mean, who got the footage? Are we talking Sean Wright or are we talking David Crowley? Who got the footage here? And end of the day, it doesn't really matter at this point if David got it or Sean Wright. It's the fact he was on that. There's a connection.
Yeah, the other thing from my background, William, too, is Luke Rudowski is limited hangout type of a cat.
Mhm.
That's not widespread known, but he's one of those who does not have a job. He's doing this for a job, and 80% of what he says is right. But he's also gathering and limiting who says what to where. And so he's, in my mind, he's not one of the good guys. That's why he's with Sean Mason. They do know him. They know him, and he's part of that We Are Change group.
Right.
And so that is why they're there. Mason Hendricks, no job. Sean Wright, no job. He now has a job, Sean Wright. And at the time, he didn't. Mason Hendricks just runs his own photography website that he's a photographer.
Mhm.
And so when he starts seeing these people with no real sources of income doing anything, but yet they're all over in different cities and getting filming and interviews.
Right.
They're getting paid somehow. So that's the question. But that's
Right.
Rudowski. That's one of your giveaways. There is that they're connected with him, and so therefore you already have to take it with a grain of salt. And I don't think you'll get an answer.
No.
Yeah, I think
Good question to ask, though.
Yeah, it is. No, it is. I'm glad that you asked that because it needs to be asked. And the other guy is Adam Kokesh, who is heavily tied with Luke, and he used to have his own show. And I remember I watched Adam's show, and Luke pops up on there, and they do a whole skit and everything. And then so Adam Kokesh came out pretty violently, actually, towards people who were asking questions, and we still have those screenshots, and pretty much exposed himself. Now, a lot of people have been telling me about Adam Kokesh, and this guy cannot be trusted. He's shady, et cetera, et cetera. The cops busted in his doors. He's out a couple days later. All these weird things that you kind of see with the same cast of characters. Adam
Kokesh is another. He's another one of these
right.
same guys, and that's what we see here over and over in the Crowley cases. The connections to all these characters.
Questionable. Even Alex Jones too, to some extent too. And you guys know my feelings, my pro Alex Jones feelings and everything. But something like that, it really changed my whole mind the way that Alex Jones treated this. But he just kept silent, kind of like how Luke is. But when Adam Kokesh, he was like out there just planning this stuff and just like saying, hey, you guys are pretty much crazy if you think this. How dare you, et cetera, all the same stuff we've been hearing. So,
well, also think about Mark Dice. Mark Dice, the same thing. And I know he's got a background, very, very colorful background. As much as he'll probably try and even say there's not. There's a colorful background there. Not even just between just him and We Are Change. It's also just you've also got his relationship with Alex Jones. So now you've got that almost a direct line to Luke Rudkowski.
Yeah.
Going to Alex Jones. Okay, then you've got, Sean Wright and all these guys. And Sean Wright even applied, went in for an entry or whatever for Alex Jones's InfoWars. Yeah, there's a lot of shadiness going on. But then you've also got, what's his name? I don't remember the host's name. Awesome guy. Gary Franchi, that's it. Gary Franchi. He came out and said something. I think it was like once or twice about David Crowley. But it was only, it was only like once or twice. I know it was at least one time he did, but I think there was a second. But regardless, he was the only one that actually did say anything, and then we've got of course, Alex Jones being asked directly on his show, basically just kept going until he said something about David Crowley. And he just eventually said, yeah, it was something along the lines, like kind of brushed off the side, like he's guilty. Yeah, whatever, I'm not supporting that or whatever. It's like, but he's not. As much as I'm with you on this. I'm pretty pro Alex Jones for the most part, but there's things about him that are just like, I've got questions. I've got a lot of questions. He's got a lot of intel, but it's like, could he be also? because you look at his background, then you see where he goes, and he's got this personality. Then it shifts. It's the same kind of thing we see with all these guys that are attached to this. And then you've got the Roger Stone connection to him. I mean, you can make that almost go full circle to David. Does it have a direct line to David? Maybe not directly, but he does have at least an indirect.
Well, you have
at least consider.
You have the Patriot Truth Tellers, and then you have the Patriot Truth Tellers. And that's what we're seeing in this huge circle. They're only telling the truth to get paid. And they're not going out on a limb. They're not actually getting that truth out there, the real truth. They're only doing what their finance.
They only go so far with the truth. Yeah.
Yes.
Not to the finish line, but just enough to. Yeah.
And the David Crowley case is just never going to be in that category. So
it seems like it would fall in line with everything that they're talking about. That's what's
exactly.
The weirdest about
exactly.
it.
Yeah, but it's completely off limits.
Right.
David, that was a murder suicide, and that's it. Don't ask questions. Don't pass go. Don't even look at it.
Don't even look at it.
Well, it's the same.
Let the family grieve.
See, I like to go and put these things in the same category as you've got the Parkland shooting. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Sandy Hook. I'm tiptoeing around that one, as I know people get sued over just even mentioning that. So I will tiptoe. I'm just going to say Sandy Hook. And then you've also got
a trigger word for YouTube. So be careful.
Well, exactly. That's why I just said just the term Sandy Hook. And then we've got David Crowley. We've got Ruby Ridge. We've got, there's a number of these types of cases like this where it's just like, what do we see here? Cover-ups. A lot of the time it's where there's a lot of cover-ups. Sandy Hook, I can't say anything about it, of course, because, well, damn it, YouTube. But but it's when we look at Parkland, there was news anchors actually getting interviews with people, and they said that there was another shooter there, right? I've got the footage of this. I have to dig for it, but I do have the footage of this where people are saying and these are students and teachers alike, both saying the same thing, that there was in fact another shooter there. Well, that's kind of weird. Why would there be another shooter? Then you've also got Stephen Paddock, that whole case.
Yeah.
That entire thing, there's more going on there. So, even just mathematically, when you look at the angle and all this, is he going to be able to hit those things? No, he couldn't hit those tanks very well. Not all of his guns are going to be able to. And I went and did extensive research on that just to go and figure that out. Is it possible? No. So not to mention there's also people in the crowd saying the same thing. There's another shooter. We're seeing this type of thing.
There's video. There's tons of video that talk about all that stuff. How did this guy get all all the guns, all the ammo? How did he get all that up there? There's so many questions, and it's like, why shouldn't we talk? Like, if we really want to figure out whether it's true, why shouldn't we talk about it? I don't think Sandy Hook should be this big thing. They're acting like, well, if you question it, then you're saying that it is a hoax, that nobody died, et cetera, all of that. And it's like, well, you know what? We need to question these things.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want these things to keep happening. You have to question this stuff. They questioned David Crowley's death. Did David fake his own death? Did they all fake their own deaths? Is that why people are being silent, why they're not talking about it?
Yeah.
I don't think it should be off limits.
Right.
I don't know, if you had these same guys that are talking about these other stuff, if they were talking about the David Crowley case, would they be censored, would they be sued, et cetera, et cetera? I really don't know. The two things to me with Sandy Hook that really stood out is the video of the guy running through the woods. And he gets, the police put him into custody, and then it's just never mentioned ever. Again, it's never brought up. It's like, to me, I would start there. What happened with that?
Right.
And could this kid carry that much ammo and the gun and all that weighing what he weighed, and none of that to me would convince me that it is a hoax or that it's not a hoax. But I mean, in order to find out what the truth is, this is what you do. You look at this stuff, you question this, and we're in this whole digital age now where people like us can sit here and talk about this and question it. And that is our right. That is our freedom to believe whatever we want. So the whole Alex Jones, what's happening with him, and I have not really kept up on it, or the Sandy Hook thing, really, to be honest with you, as much as I would like to, just because of time and because of other things happening. But I don't know what the big deal is, why it's like some off limits thing. I know it's being shadow banned, and I believe we're already being shadow banned. So I have no problem kind of going there. But it's like, if I even mention it, all of a sudden I'm saying that it's a hoax, it's this, it's that. It's like, I'm just asking these questions, these simple questions about this stuff. We're not even allowed to do that in some of these cases. So that's not freedom.
No.
Same with this case though too. It's like, that's all that we're doing. We're asking questions, looking at where the evidence takes us. And it's like, the more data requests, the more things that we do, the longer we keep the case open, the more information we're getting here. We've gotten information as just this past summer. I didn't think we were going to get that. I thought we'd get the 94 pages, 464 photos, and that's it. Done. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's all we have. Even that shows that David didn't do it.
Right.
And then we get more data. And it's like, well, this just pretty much piles up to show David didn't do it. And it limits, the more data we find that David didn't do it, the more the possibility that he did just goes down and down and down. It's at negative zero. It's below freezing.
Right. Well, and the thing is, it's the more we expand on the timeline, and once again, got to just say thank you, Dan, for that. I appreciate the initial timeline, and Sophia and Catherine and Greg, of course, for helping me with that, compiling and get more information. But the timeline, it's like I've been saying for a while now, that timeline is going to blow up in their face. It's not going to blow up in ours. It's going to blow up in their face. Metaphorically, of course, but it's one of those things that it's with the phone numbers, we can already track relationships. We can already see, were they talking or not? Were they actually in a pretty healthy relationship? Were they as close as they were saying? Were they as talking as often as they were claiming? Well, you can see they weren't. Then you've got his search history. Well, that's just proving he's invested in learning more about the Iraq War. He's looking how far back this goes. The thing is, anybody, I mean, if nobody's familiar with what he was looking up, then you're going to see, well, he's looking at these massacres. He's looking at these mass murders and things like this. And why would he do that? Why is he looking up the Iraq War? Oh, well, it's probably because he was a vet and all this. No. He had more reason than just that. He was there, so he got to witness some things. He got to hear stories. He got to hear all about this and see this, and before we even did. So he's doing his own investigation. You can see that's what he's doing, and the direct tie into these things. It's uncanny when you're in the know, you just know, right? And that's something I've been telling people for years now. Investigate, do your research on this. And when you're looking at what David's looking at, if you've done your research, you'll see the connections. And the thing is, none of this is proving David's crazy. None of this is proving that David has PTSD. None of this is proving anything negative towards David. It's literally showing he's investigating. Does he make it clear in his journals once we got that he's trying to move away from Gray State? Yeah, he wants to. He wants to go and get past it. He's got other projects he wants to go and get started on. He wants to get those going, but he wants to move away from Gray State. He's trying to go and push himself away. He's got his story going on. He wants to, he wants that going, get to Hollywood, make his money and all this, and, have a nice life for his family. Even that part where it's like, where he talks about sacrifices, his I think it was his child, or like time with child or whatever. It's the whole thing that he had to put so much time into Gray State that it took away from his time with his daughter. Do I do that? Yeah, I sacrifice my time so that way I can make better for my kids. There's no difference there, but that's the thing, is I think there's a lot of people also taking that out of context. So it's one of those things. I think that if with everything we've got, it just proves David's sanity for the most part. There's parts in there it's like, well, what does he mean by this exactly? Could this be taken on a different path? Yes, possibly. But overall, everything we've got is just as you said, it's basically proven David completely innocent. What has he done? I believe at one point you even ask in your book too, well, does this, I believe it was after all the questions were asked, of course, does any of this stuff here prove there was a struggle? Does it? I mean, I would say to some degree, possibly. Some of the stuff looks like there could be the knife out, the bullets that are just all over. He's got the one bullet. It's the bullet, not even fired. Things like this. It's just plus asking the question of, was he left or right-handed? So I don't know if that was a later question or not. Still, my point here is this is showing that the police didn't know crap about what was going on. Really, they didn't. They tried to go and put something on David because, well, they couldn't without a doubt prove he did it.
Right.
There was no way if they were to take him to court, he would have ate them for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and had some leftovers. Come on. They were screwed at that point. He's dead. He can't fight. He can't fight back. David could have proved his innocence. The thing is, that's why he's dead, I think, because, well, he can't fight back. These questions, God, they're a godsend. Really, they really are. Because they just show, what do the police know? What are they willing to talk about? And like Dan pointed out earlier, there's a lot of legalese in there. And just why is there so much legalese? Are you trying to go and avoid some red tape here because you can't really say anything about it because maybe it's too close to the vest, or what's going on here? So.
Yeah.
Well, even when Catherine was speaking with Detective Gummer on the phone,
Mm-hmm.
she told me that the captain was there giving him prompts on how to answer these questions.
Whoa.
So they don't talk about it without having somebody help them talk about the case.
Right.
And that should tell people everything in regards to this case.
Right. And the thing is, if this is really a case where somebody's guilty, they generally don't have a problem without, even having a lawyer present. They can talk to you. This is an open and shut case. They'll talk to you. This is why he's guilty. Well, that's why he has his superiors surrounded him. It's because they're like, crap, I can't really talk about this without being watched here because, well, they've got an eye on the case. They still have an eye on it. By the way, do you know how long ago Catherine talked to Gummert about this?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question. How long ago? What?
Did Catherine speak to Gummert?
About 2.5, 3 years ago.
Okay.
So, and then he was gone for quite a few months after that. I don't know if he had took time off for surgery or what, but he was gone.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully it was for a legit reason rather than trying to avoid. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope the same thing.
All right, let's get back on track here. I got to jump off the call in about 20 minutes. We got a lot to cover.
Sorry about that.
Question 16, did you ever speak to Anjum Alam? His answer was no. Now, that's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Question 17, I received a 94-page PDF document full of police reports. Are there any police reports that were excluded in the 94-page PDF? He answered, no.
Well, we know that's not true.
No, both those aren't true.
Well, yeah, and he does answer later on about, he did actually speak with Anjum at some point. Dan, I know you did too. You
I spoke with
him.
Officer Gummert May 16th
Mhm.
directly on that year when we got the paperwork back on, was it 2015? And he said that he did. He was contacting him all the time. He was in communication. My only question with this is as clear as a question as you can get. did you ever speak to Anjum? And he said, no. How do you screw that up? How do you misinterpret that? He says, no, I did talk to him.
Well, and this goes back down to that one of the previous questions we just had, where he was very, very clear and concise. You know, like basically a double no on the answer, and he's blatantly lying right here. I mean, whether it's quote unquote accidental or not, I mean, I would say it's probably not. You know, pretty direct. He would have, had time. I mean, it's via email, so he could literally just think, did I talk to him? He has time to go and actually go and talk to his superiors. Did I talk to Anjum? They're telling me no, so I'm going to say no. It's like, but did you? You would know if you did.
And this was, the word speak. Maybe he meant, I didn't speak to him, but I was emailing him every day.
Right. It's where it
But
comes to semantics.
the point of the question is, Sidra herself came on an interview and said that I'm the focus, I'm the point of contact for the Alam family. Sidra said this, the sister of Kamel. She said, everything's coming through me. So that's also why we asked him just to say, are you in communication with the father? No. Well, he says, yeah, I'm communicating with him all the time. So now we got Sidra. What's the truth? Yeah, so.
Well, as far as the police reports, which ones do you think were excluded in this? What reports would have been excluded?
Well, we didn't have the BCA reports. We didn't.
But those
have-
wouldn't count. Those wouldn't count as the police reports, right? As far as just police report for question number 17.
Apple Valley Police Department.
Yeah, for the Apple Valley police reports, I couldn't find any evidence that there were any missing. But obviously, if they're missing, I wouldn't know that they were missing because I haven't seen them. So I don't know.
Now
It's kind of a double.
I think this question comes in, Greg, also because some other justice group pages were saying that we have the full information and you guys only have the summary pages. You guys only have the summary.
Gotcha.
We have the full police report. So I think that's in the spirit of this question was, what are we missing? Is there other people that have all the reports from Apple Valley Police that we've been hearing about? The people saying that our justice page is a fraud. They said, we've got them all. You guys only have the summary, a very small summary. We have hundreds of pages. So we asked him, are we missing anything? He says, no, you have it all. So once again, it answers multiple questions. Who's lying?
Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead.
In regards to summaries, that is just a technical word that they're using for each little thing that they add to the police report. These police reports look just like the other police reports that I've received from Apple Valley and another police department in Minnesota. They all look very similar, and I have received the files from 2 different cases in Minnesota besides David Crowley. So what we have is the actual police reports. It's not just summaries. That's just a technical for every little notation made on the case. And so.
Yeah, I think I remember some people were trying to say that the supplemental reports, that's all that we have. But it's like, well, the supplemental reports are based on the actual police report. So it's all tied in together. But the only thing we don't have, I feel like, is the transcripts of what when the police talk with people, the ones that they did record, which doesn't seem like it was all of them, but I think that type of stuff we don't have. Who actually said what? Okay, question answer, which Sophia, you also got on that other case, and that's what we were kind of hoping for. And I know Dan has asked for some of that stuff, and they weren't willing to give him any of it.
Yeah,
not even the dash cam footage.
I just found that very odd because I didn't even ask for the recordings in the other case, which was handled by the same detectives that handled the David Crowley case. And I got the recordings for the other case.
Are we talking about Pencock?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good tie-in right there. I like it.
Yeah. And
Real
And
police work versus no police work.
yeah, exactly. In that case, I actually believe that it was a murder suicide. Everything flowed, it matched the photos.
Mhm.
And I'm like, wow, okay, yeah, this is believable. And, we have recordings and everything. They gave us everything that they did for that case, except autopsies. They didn't do BCA work, so that they couldn't give me what they didn't have. But with this case, there's so many questions, and
Well, BCA was called in so quickly too.
yeah, it was.
So why was it called on Pencock? That's my question. It would be under the exact same category, except that it's just another murder on top of the initial suicide.
That one, they had a neighbor who called it in who had heard the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were pretty sure that it was a murder suicide. And then for this one, I guess because it had gone, their bodies had not been found for quite a while, they had to go in there as a suspicious death first. I don't know. I'm guessing on this. I don't know why the BCA wasn't called out for the other case. I honestly. But when I did ask for that information, they said no, they didn't do any of the DNA or anything like that. So.
Question 18 is very
Yes.
similar to this as well. It kind of ties in because we're asking these questions not only to get answers, but because we've also been ridiculed in our group for not having all the info. So we're asking him, question 18, I received 464 images from the Apple Valley Police Department after filling out their disclosure request form. How many images were possibly withheld? Hundreds? Thousands? End of question, right there. Because there are groups that were telling to us that you don't have all the photos. We got the photos. You don't have all the photos. There are so many that weren't out there. Well, he answers hundreds. Now, what we can assume is there were some of the gruesome ones that we can't show in public of the bodies. Those are withheld. That makes sense. That's a given. They're not going to present that to us. They're not going to give us the gruesome ones, the grotesque ones. We're not asking for those. Our question at the time was, where is the photo of the gun in the room on the floor? Where was the weapon? That's a photo of the weapon. That's not gruesome. That's not grotesque. Why was that withheld? And so this is where we got onto this whole topic of the gun. Where was the gun? We don't mind if you withhold the gruesome photos. That's part of your job. You have control to do that. We were saying, where was the gun lying? The only image we have on a gun is sitting on a table on a nightstand or wherever that was in the living room. And that's obviously not where it landed. So but he did say hundreds. So what's your take on that, Greg?
Yeah, hundreds. I was kind of expecting that. I know because Tom Lydon had said, they received, hundreds of photos and this and that. And so, yeah, hundreds is not that shocking. I was just glad it wasn't thousands. Because I figure, well, the more that images that they have, the more possibilities that they may have a photo of the living room ceiling, of the hole in that living room ceiling, which they did not have. So, I mean, hundreds is still a lot of photos to withhold. So just hundreds of photos of gruesome stuff. Is that why it was withheld? I mean, why withhold hundreds of different photos? I guess that was the big thing. And I don't know. I still don't know why.
The point on this was, you're right, Greg. It was the Tom Lydon Fox 9 news report that spun this question, and the previous one. He said in his interview, I think that he said he had 1,500 pages of police reports from Apple Valley Police Department. I think that's what caused our question number 17.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How can he have 1,500 when there's only 94? We asked Gummert, how many others that are out there that we missed other than 94? He says none. And then I think the photos, Tom Lydon also said that I saw all the photos, all these things. Well, which ones did you get that we didn't? Well, he said there's hundreds withheld, but it still comes to be the same thing. We've got inconsistencies is the word.
Yeah, my
yeah.
question is why is he more privileged to have that than we are?
Well, that's
You know,
that's
he-
what was weird is Tom Lydon was showing photos that we didn't have, that were not part of the 464
Mhm.
photos. So I was like, okay, well, how many more do they have? Tom Lydon also said that it was given out mistakenly, and he insinuated that he actually was given photos of the three bodies, very gruesome photos too. So
Well, the clarification on that, and that's a good point. Officer Gumbert told me directly that there was a mistake, an administrative mistake, that gave him the full CD of all the details to Tom Lydon. That should not have gone out to him. That was a mistake. He did admit to that. He shouldn't have got that one. There's a version that we got, and everyone who files FOIA requests, and that version, that CD of the photos and the 94 pages should have been what he got. He got the full Monty. That's where this started all coming in from. And Gumbert said that he apologized. He shouldn't have. There was an administrative clerical mistake that he got the whole thing. And what was most important for that was there was blood written on the wall, Allah Akbar. And that was one of those photos, which to me, there's nothing gruesome. There's nothing unsavory about that. There's nothing grotesque. There's blood writing on the wall. So why didn't we get even those ones? So they were withholding other things as well. The Muslim angle ones were withheld. And so.
In regards to the, wanting to have the gun photo in situ, for the other case that I was researching that happened in the Apple Valley area, and that was investigated by the same team, I got photos, about 7 to 9 of them, of the gun in situ for that other case.
Yep.
And-
And that's typically what you would get in a crime scene. You'd have 4 or 5 photos of just the gun, different angles, everything. We didn't get a one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it was not lying by the bodies. It was several inches away from David's left hand. And like we said, you can crop it out. You can scan it. You can blur his hand if you want. We just want the photo of the gun.
Yeah.
So that was withheld. Why? Why would the gun be withheld? And so those are just, I think those are honest questions. Very fair questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very curious the way you answered too with it. It's why would they withhold so much? Like I said, we know for a fact there would not have been hundreds of pictures of the bodies like this. And if there was, well, then I have questions why they took so many damn pictures of the bodies when it wasn't really like I understand getting like few angles of the bodies each, but
Well, even if there's 20 photos of each of the bodies in different angles, that's 20, 40, that's 60. He says hundreds with an
Mhm.
S.
Mhm.
I would guess there's 10 or 15 maybe of each body, and that's maybe 45 photos that we don't want to see.
Right.
I'm not interested in seeing those. But he
Right.
said he withheld hundreds of photos.
I know. Yeah.
That's what
I'm
I don't
getting at.
understand.
Yeah, it's not all those photos can be grotesque. And like you just said, if it has a picture of the bodies in it, we just want a picture of the gun. We want to see where was it when they got in there. Is this the same gun that was actually set up there or not? Well, we know that. I mean, you can see that now with the photo, but it's just kind of weird why they wouldn't, like Sophia was saying, she was able to take a look at the Pencott case and be able to see where the gun was at, different angles and all that. So why wouldn't they do this for this? Doesn't make any sense.
And
I'm sure
just-
he'll. Mhm.
Oh, and just for the record, for the listeners, over time, we have received a lot more photos. I mean, probably all the ones that are available, besides the ones of the bodies. And we have made those available for the group and for anybody researching the case.
Right.
But
yeah,
this
yeah.
years ago that these questions were asked.
Sure. Yeah. And having the photo that we have now that does show the bodies and does show where that gun was found, as long as the Apple Valley City attorney has not confirmed that that is an actual photo.
No.
Hopefully they will. And but if that is a real photo, it shows exactly what we've been asking for years. Where was a gun found? where was the barrel pointed, et cetera, et cetera. This
How
image
close
gives
to the
you all of
hand?
that. How close to the hand, exactly. And it does seem to match within a couple feet or one foot that they say. So it does seem to match that. And it's like, this is not a big deal, guys. Why are you withholding? There's no reason to withhold this. I mean, it
Right.
pretty much, it doesn't help their case because we know David is right-handed. Doesn't help their case because when you look at where the gun was fired, where the bullet landed, where the, you know, they say the bullet traveled from generally west to east or something like that. So it maybe doesn't line up with whatever they're trying to say. Maybe that's why they were withholding it. But other than that, I really don't see any reason to withhold it. And if somebody has it, if people were given that, and if it's public data, then we should have been given that too. So hopefully we'll get some clarification on that soon.
Now, the next question is very interesting, Greg. Number 19 for Gummert is it possible to get the censored images that will help prove 3 bodies were found at the Crowley residence on January 17th, 2015? His answer is no. So obviously he said no. We were expecting him to say no, but it's one of those situations that you're not going to know the answer until you ask the question. So we had to ask it. This came in light of many people or many other groups and many other folks that said that this whole thing was a hoax and no one was killed at all. They were all possibly mannequins found at the body, at the scene, or 3 people, for instance, homeless individuals that resembled them, killed, put in their place to make it look like they were the ones killed and not really Combel, David, and Rania. And so these were swirling at the same time as we never got to see what was going on. So I think that's why that question was asked as well. Was there a triple homicide, first of all? And was it David and Combel? People thought maybe they're off on a desert island somewhere, a remote island, and living the high life and faked their own deaths. So this at least gives us the answer there. Well, it doesn't really give us the answer, but he says, no, you're not gonna see it. All right, question 20. Is it possible to get the medical examiner's report or BCA reports in addition to what has already been provided? His answer is you will have to contact them. Fair enough. These agencies are really going to watch their own, first of all, right? Take their own agency under their wing, and they're not going to do any effort, put any effort forth for another agency. They're going to say, you know how to contact them, get it yourself, fill out a FOIA request. It's not our job. And so that didn't surprise us too much, right?
Right. I think one of the big things here is this kind of falls in line with what they were giving to the public. They were giving 94 pages, whereas Tom Lydon says he had, 1,500 pages with that. Okay, maybe the 1,500 pages included the medical examiner report. Maybe they included the BCA. From this question, from number 20, what I gather is that that's all a part of a different data request from different people. So what is this 1,500 page thing that he's talking about? Unless he's including the photos, which even then it's not going to come out to 1,500 pages, even if you include those photos. So it's like, this just kind of confirmed to me that the 1,500 pages or whatever that Tom Lydon got, the BCA reports, which there's a lot of data, there's if you calculate the one that Dan got, the one that we got later on, that's almost 1,000 pages just by itself. There's some crossover. Yeah.
I don't think that Tom Lydon would have got the data dump that we received. Because
that's from the
they tried to
BCA.
generate
Right?
that one.
Yeah.
Specifically for me, and it took almost a year.
Okay.
So I honestly don't think that he received that. I think it was a combination of the redacted, the full, probably the DNA results, everything, the search warrants, all that.
Yeah. But still, a lot of that wouldn't really come out unless they include the phone records or stuff like that. Maybe that would come out to the 1,500 pages, but. That's why I wanted to ask specifically about the police reports, but this, also just, so I think number 20 just confirmed for me that if you put in a data request with the Apple Valley, you're not going to get the BCA reports, and you're not going to get the medical examiner reports.
Yeah.
Gotcha, makes sense. Fair enough. And the final question. Question 21. What did you find within hours after arriving at the crime scene that led you to believe David Crowley was guilty of a double murder suicide? End quote. That's the question. What did you find? His answer was assessment of scene. Thoughts, William? Or Cedric?
Oh man, well that just shows he's not capable of critical thinking or even looking at a crime scene like at all, really, because I mean it's pretty obvious David didn't do it. We could see all sorts of different things. This guy would have more experience with firearms than I would. Sure, I'll give him that. I don't own a gun, but this guy, he's a police officer, so he's had training and all this. He would most likely have knowledge of the firearm. I would at least argue that to some degree. And to see where the gun was at, to see where all the bullet casings were at, doesn't really line up. And now I know there's those out there that'll say, well, Paleo could have kicked him around, could have moved him around. Okay, yeah, that's taking a stretch here. I'm not going to go along with that really at all, because there's a lot of bullet casings that were just like, they're off to the right. They look like they hadn't really moved. Like they were just there. They dropped. That's where they bounced to. They were there.
That's 150 pounds paleo moving. No, sorry, not buying.
Right. And so that's the thing. It's like, you've got the location of the gun, you got the lack of blood, you've got all sorts of other things there. Like the bullet trajectory is obvious which way the bullets went up, which ones went down. It's the guy is not very capable. He honestly should probably quit that. He's not very good at his job. At least we can see it through this. Now we look at Pencock, we can see he knows how to do his job. And so did he really get that much extra training on homicide? From David to Pencock? I mean, that's when we got to look at the cases. How many homicides were happening for him to actually be able to do his job effectively on Pencock, but not on David's? Was he new to being a detective on David's case? This to me, it's him just automatically making an assessment well before he should have. He didn't, like I said, he didn't question bullet trajectory, didn't look at blood spatter. He didn't look at the lack of blood. You got those that are saying, well, with all the blood that would have been there, it would have, been soaked up in the floor and all this. Well, then what about through that other hole that would have been there? Blood would have been downstairs. Where's the blood? Where's the blood soaked into the wood? Where's that? I'd like to see that. Where's the blood in the carpet? Well, we see that it looks like body fluid is all that looks like that's there. Why were the bodies moved? It's
Well, the question that I have, and I think this is fair, kind of touch on your point, William, and then I got to jump off in about 5 minutes, was Officer Gummert's background as a detective so good that he rose up through the ranks and then became the sergeant of that group because he was such a good detective? Or did he get a promotion elsewhere and was a traffic cop and then got a promotion to be a sergeant of the detective unit? And that's more of a police officer question. Does that happen? Would you get promoted and get a job and inserted to a spot where that's not your forte?
That's a good question.
I don't know. Now, the opposite of that, the offset to that is, if I was to walk in and look at the scene at the Crowley house and any armchair investigator, of course it looked like David did it. And in a couple hours later, you would assume that he did. But what they're taught as homicide detectives is treat everything as a homicide until you start ruling things out that it is a suicide. Even in suicide cases, you're supposed to treat it initially as a homicide. That's what that's 101. I'm not even in law enforcement. I know that.
Right.
You have to treat it as a homicide until the evidence leads you to a suicide. So the fact that he said right away and made public in the press releases essentially is, we're treating this as a double homicide suicide. And that is not good at all, the fact to even say that. But I also think that they were protecting what they felt was the citizens of Apple Valley by saying there's not a killer on the loose. We don't want anyone scared that the killers are out there. Well, that's also poor because the killers are out there and have been now for 7 years. And so it's, once again, it's out to save face. It's to save respect for the department. They're doing everything they can to show that they're good. Then the problem is that they're not. And that's why when I honestly left that review on their Facebook page, a review on the Facebook page for the Apple Valley Police Department, 1 through 5 stars. What do you think? I did 1 star. I said, I hope they get the education and training they need to beef up their skills, because the Crowley case in particular was horribly done. I did 1 star, posted, and it went public. That's
And
my
then-
opinion. That's
And
my
and then
opinion.
they banned you, right? Or after
They
that,
pulled it
right?
off. They pulled it down. It was removed 2 weeks later. That review 2 weeks later was deleted. And so I asked Gummert himself personally, who in your department is deleting comments for your customer satisfaction for your department? You're a business like any other business.
Public, right?
Leaving ratings there, whether you run a deli or a restaurant or a manufacturing company. Your ratings are what people think of you. That's their opinion. It's supposed to be left open for 1 stars, favorable, unfavorables. Greg, you know, you've got a book out there. I'm sure people have left unfavorable reviews. It's not your job to now start censoring the ones that are unfavorable.
Right.
I wasn't giving them a shot either, as far as just dissing them. It honestly was, I thought, a 1 star. Their department's a 1 star. It's. I don't like them. I don't think they did a good job. Now, did they do it on purpose, and were they covering things up on purpose? Who knows? I can't answer to that. But what they did in the Crowley case was not what I would call quality at any level. And so I just left them an honest return, a rating.
Well, I mean, this is the way I like to look at it. You brought up armchair detectives and things like this. My very first stream I did on the case, it was pretty obvious to me. I watched a Gray State. It was obvious he didn't do it. You know, they made it obvious. You know, yet people are trying to say that it's obvious he did it. Well, how is it obvious? Because when you're presented with everything, you can see he didn't do it. So, I'll catch you later, Dan.
All right, see you guys.
Thanks, Dan.
Hi, Dan.
You know, it's
Always
one of
good
the,
to have Dan there.
oh yeah, absolutely. Still hoping we can talk finances on the financial reports. Hopefully we'll be able to do that. But when it comes down to this, it's like, if I can do it, I mean, I'm just the average Joe. I can look at this case. I'm sure you guys did a lot of the same things. You guys look at this case and be like, no, David didn't do it. There's no way. You know, just the initial look, yeah, he didn't do it. I'm sure you guys did too. You know, I'm sure there's others that have as well. Just looked at it and like, well, it's impossible. David could not have done this. And that's without even having to do heavy research on the gun or his training on, you know, the bullet trajectory, you know, and actually like looking at different parts about the crime scene, actually breaking it down, almost down to the molecular level on this. Like you could look at it and see he didn't do it, but yet they're still adamant. So that just tells me, I mean, like going back on the quality of service, they're still a government agency. And we know that our government loves to go and cover things up. You know, I mean, look how long Vietnam was covered up for. Did they actually start it? No, we did. You know, that came out with FOIA requests. You know, we got to see that. Gulf of Tonkin was BS.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's the same thing with this. So when they're a government agency, I mean, to expect them to not delete a bad review, I would expect them every single time. Look what they did on YouTube. Crying out loud, you can't even listen to the resident in chief's you know, thing and actually be like, oh, I didn't like what you had to say here. You know, disabling comments. It's so different. They've been censoring for a long time here.
Yeah, they even took the dislike away. So
Yeah,
it's
and
like,
people went above and beyond. We're like, well, fine then. Comments, dislike. YouTube's like, well, let's remove that
way
too.
too.
People will find a way. They'll find a
Oh,
way.
oh yes. They have the will to do so, and they're going to do it.
So that's why I can't see the dislikes anymore.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Okay.
They took it away.
They took it away. Is it
Yeah.
that bad?
It's
mean,
too
okay.
negative. It's
Like
safe
you're just not
space.
to see it.
Right.
It's
Okay.
safe space for
Interesting.
people now.
Why even have it? Why not just
Right.
not have? I think because when Facebook started, they had a dislike too, and they just completely took it off of Facebook.
Yeah.
It's to give you the illusion that you have a choice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it all
Way to
comes
put
down to
it.
freedom, and our government, since Piss Vance took office, he
Cat number 2.
yeah,
Yeah.
before he pooped himself even. It's the whole, they've been censoring us. I mean, you guys look back at the Patriot Act, things like this. This took place before David. We're looking at PNAC, we're looking at all these other things that are going on, and you got all these other people that are like, hey, this isn't okay. We got September 11th all this happened. What is David looking at here, right? And it's the same reason why I still think there's a cover up, and I think the police, I think they knew full well. I think they're doing their minimum amount. They're taking minimum steps with this. So, and I think this is also, we got to see Pencock, so we got to see comparison. Why wasn't that taken more seriously like Pencock was? It was brushed under the rug a lot, and that's the problem I have with this entirely, is the fact that it looks like it was just brushed under the rug. They're trying to just get away from it, get the public eye off it. Sorry, I keep coming full circle on that one, but it's what happened, and it's BS. Really irritates me.
Well, Pencock it's very obvious what happened in that case, and you can see it, the
Right.
whole evolution of the case and everything. And it's like, okay, that's what happened. I have the recordings, I have the gun photos, everything lines up with the police reports. And then you go to this case and you're just like, wait a minute, the bodies were laying like how? And you see a sketch, but the sketch isn't lining up to the descriptions that the officers are giving.
Right.
And, it's like, okay, where was the gun? And a lot of people get this confused because they think that the gun is actually on that bookcase when the officers come in. They don't realize that the gun was supposedly found by David's left knee, I guess, in that general area on the carpet. And because we don't have an actual photo of that,
Right.
the only photos that we have are on that bookcase thing by the Christmas tree.
Right.
And, so anyway, it's just a very confusing case. And here comes.
Well, see, for me, I don't think it's as much really confusing. It's pretty obvious, just like Pencock. I would even argue more so than Pencock. Pencock was very, very obvious. But when it came to this case, it was just like, I looked at it, and the minute I got to go and see, okay, well, here's where we get to see where the bodies were claimed to have been at, right? Where we got to see the staining, it's obvious. It becomes very obvious. You can see movement of these bodies, and it's not because this whole I know other people put out this whole thing, well, when people die, their bodies move. Ooh, no, they do, but not to an extreme amount like these
Exactly.
did.
There is slight movement because of the whole
Putrefaction.
Yeah, thank you. And
No problem.
going through that whole process of decay, but it's not drastic.
Right. Well, and even then, see, so I know that people bring up this whole bug issue with that too, because that's also going to help with decay process, just like mold will and mildew and things like this. Well, it's kind of weird about how, if you look at, unfortunately, I have to bring up the whole details of a photo, but there is a photo of the bodies out there.
Yes.
And if you were to look at Rania, she's got what appears to be either mold or mildew growing on her, while the other two don't have any. Now, the thing is, their bodies at that point, they would both be having, with the amount she had, they would have had some growing on them. There was none on them. Okay. Now, I looked and looked and looked. I couldn't find an ounce of it. And, we don't have every angle, so that's fine. But I looked as much as I could, because some of the photos did have pieces of the bodies available for us to see. And this is what they gave us. Like you can see the hand of David, where it's skeleton, where it's literally skeletonizing. you've got a picture where you can see Kamel Kamel's upper body, like, with the couch and all this, and then you can see part of like David's like lower, like I think it's like from his knees or maybe a little above, right onto his thighs, down. You can see all that because of the angle.
Any thoughts on the
questions?
last, just the very last one here? I mean, my only thing that I would want to make on this one for 21 is, it was a pretty clear question. What did you find within hours? Within hours, I specifically wanted to know that because within hours they're claiming this, and so it isn't like, okay, it took me a whole year to assess this scene or to figure out that they did it. I want to make it very clear. Why are you guys saying within hours that David is guilty? And it's the assessment of this scene. So it's like when you walk into this scene within hours, we've seen a lot now. We've finally seen, the photos where the gun was. We've seen the body photos where the placement was, and looking at all of that, I mean, I don't understand how someone would walk in, especially a trained police officer, would walk in and say that this is a double murder suicide, case closed almost kind of thing. That really stuck out to me, and that bothered me then. That still bothers me now. But that's why I specifically phrased this question like that, to say, like, within a few hours, why are you guys accusing this guy? Like, what did you see when you walk into this crime scene? What could you have possibly seen that would show you that David Crowley is guilty? And the answer to me, and this is also the reason why I put this last. The answer to me is one of the strangest answers that I've ever seen.
Everything that I have looked at in regards to, and I was trying to pull up this particular quote. I've looked at textbooks for crime scene investigation, blood spatter, forensics. I have textbooks on all of those, and they were all saying the very same thing about you don't go in with a closed mind. You look at everything, the autopsy, just everything, and you take that into account. You are looking at the whole entire case, and
this is why they suck. Just saying.
And here they're just saying they looked at the crime scene within 2 hours. Their assessment said that he was guilty. We didn't take other things into factor, but
yeah, they're a crappy police department.
Yeah, that's
they
it.
suck.
That's literally it.
Yeah, 1 star, I'd give them like -20. They suck. Like bad. I mean, they make I've mostly looked at a lot of Portland cases, if I'm being honest, because I live here. So, and the police department we have in Portland, far better than Apple Valley. Apple Valley's crap. I've looked at other states and looked at how they handled their cases as well, and they didn't fumble this hard. This was just like almost like just straight up, just like, I don't want to say negligence, but just like they suck. They really, really suck. And at this point, I think I would have, if I were the police chief, I would have fired them all. I would be like, no, unless there was some reason for, for keeping them around, but I don't see any good reason to keep them around. They suck that bad. But Pencock, they proved that they are capable.
I kind of see it the other way, really. Even in the Pinnock case, they also missed a bullet there too. But when you look at the first
treadmill. It
was in the treadmill. In the treadmill, right? I mean, nobody's going to look in a treadmill.
The officers even got awards for their investigation of this case.
Yeah,
that's true.
They did a terrible job.
That's true, but that looks like hush money to me.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look, it's like the more documents that we got, the more that I feel like the police should be on our side, and that they could be, and they could be silenced, and they could just be told at the very top, you know what, you guys, this is what we're going with. This is it. I mean, even if you just look at when the first press release came out from that point, like, or the second one, not the first one. The first one just talked about quote unquote suspicious activity or whatever, suspicious, whatever it was. The second one, when that second one came out and pretty much said that this was a double murder suicide, it pretty much hogtied any of the investigators who wanted to do their job, whether they wanted to or not. At that point, like, you're going to go against your captain, you're going to go against your chief.
Yeah, good
like
luck on that one.
I would expect, the whole point of those higher ups are to kind of be the filter and say, wait a minute, you guys missed this, you guys missed that or something. It doesn't look like the police missed anything. It looks like it got to that point where it was just like, well, this is what we're going with. But they were never really, it doesn't seem like they were really told to, they weren't pushed to really look for anybody else. It was always just, I felt like the police were always pushed to just look for what proves David Crowley guilty. They spent a lot of time trying to prove that, and definitely failed. And even after failing, it was just like, that's why I don't believe there was any final police report or any final, okay, this is what happened step by step, like we've seen in other cases. It was just kind of shut down, silence. And I really believe that's why Detective Gummert was like, look, we're not talking about this. He was probably told we're not talking about this, and forgot that he had already told me that he would talk about it afterwards.
Yeah. And so that's why, he was probably being told, okay, you're going to run this by us, and then we're going to go and we're going to give you your answers. We're going to tell you how you can answer. I mean, it felt that way. I'm not even going to argue that that's definitely what that looks like what's going on with Gummert. But at the same time, like I said, with Pencock, we got to see they can work. They're not the best detectives by any means. I would even argue they're still, they're just like mediocre at best. I wouldn't say they're great, but it's the whole, we got to see they can work cohesively. We know they can show there's communication between each of the detectives on their team. We got to see all this. They can work cohesively and all have the same answer. With this, it just doesn't seem like they all have the exact same answer, just like how, they all have the same conclusion.
Yeah.
But I think they have a different route on how they took it to get to that point. And I think that will be an interesting one to do is to ask them individually. So how do you think this all occurred?
Right.
I can almost guarantee they're all going to have a slightly different story. It'll probably be probably more slight. I want to say that way, more slight than how, Danny August Mason, Hendricks, and Sean Wright, all like how different their stories are. I can almost guarantee it's not going to be like how vastly different it was with those. They all have the same conclusion too, for the most part. David did it, end of the day, David did this. But when it came down to, just how it all happened, then you start getting the whole pack theory, and then you get the whole, David just snapped, right?
Well, even the police don't have it written down as a pack theory.
Right. And the thing
right, because that would make it a double suicide and a murder, right?
Right.
Not a double murder suicide.
Correct. So it's one of those things that it's just, they're trying to say David snapped, and then they're trying to play the PTSD card. That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
That he was taking in too much conspiracy theories, and he just cracked, and along, that coupled with his quote unquote PTSD that he apparently had, even though Mitch Heil was like, no, he didn't have it, he would know what that looks like. And he was just like, he didn't have it, but yet coupled with that alleged PTSD, then that caused him to snap, lose sight of reality, since, he was obviously taking mushrooms, and the marijuana was playing a huge influence on his life. It wasn't. He makes it very clear in his journals, so they didn't read that either, obviously. Yeah, I wouldn't even say they didn't really skim it very well, which they suck at skimming. If that was skimming, they're terrible. They should learn to read better. Just saying. But when it comes down to it, there was so much missed, and all these claims that the police department made were inherently false. Just all they had to do was just look at the facts, and they'd be able to see it. And I think you might be onto something. Maybe their hands were tied, and they very well could have been. the captain's saying this and the chief is saying this. So do we go against it, or do we, risk losing our job and being humiliated and ridiculed? Possibly worse. Some police departments do that. So, or do we just kind of just go along with the narrative and, keep our jobs, possibly get a recommendation, or not a recommendation, but commendations. And I think they just kind of just took the better offer is what it was.
Yeah.
No, it's really not. I'm too giddy for this case.
Test 1 2, testing 1 2 3, test 1 2, test 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3, 1 2 3, 1 2 3. Trying to beat the clock here. This podcast recording. But this podcast went really long, by the way. The first one with Detective Gummert also went long, too. That one is 2 hours, 17 minutes. You can see most of them about 1 hour. I mean, the bonus shows are different, not counting the bonus shows, but pretty interesting stuff there. So for everyone who has seen it, who has listened to it, I appreciate that. Appreciate all of you taking some time out to listen to the Gray Stage podcast. Just looking at some of the numbers and how we did in 2021, and we're up, I think, as listenership, like 75% up. So, I mean, the more we do it, the more people are tuning in and checking it out and going back and rewatching it. I took a little snapshot of the top 10 episodes of the podcast. I thought that was pretty interesting. Some good numbers there. But I'm always shocked to see what people like, what they don't like. I'm kind of leaning away from the music at this point too. So even some of the past episodes, I may go back and remove some of the music or just kind of draw out some of that music as well. But this was the first show that we did using Zoom. So I will have that one coming up soon. I'm just kind of working on it. Almost done. But you can see if I were to not cut anything out right now, it would be at about 1 hour, 48 minutes or so. So, but I'm making some headway on that. I'm looking forward to sharing all of that with you later today for all of you who are watching this live. But I just really need to record the outro, which is kind of long, actually. But I need to get that done so that I can add that to the episode and make sure that I stick to the schedule of having the podcast available on the first of every month, so you can see how far back I am. What a great way to start the year, right? I still got some hours. Even if I don't release it till tonight, it would still be fine. So let's see here. I don't even remember what page it was. So there's Detective 21 questions for Detective Gummert. First episode did really well. We got through the first 12 questions. People seemed to really respond to it, and I was very happy with it. But what I need to add is just everything after question 21 and on. So that's what you're going to hear today. Maybe some outtakes, maybe some of me stuttering, stammering, but yeah, why not? Let's start out the year fresh, new, and revived. And let's make 2022 a great year. Main thing is to not give up on this case. So I hope you all enjoyed listening to the Gray Stage podcast. This was episode number 24 of the Gray Stage podcast, and we were joined by Dan Hinnon, myself, Greg Fernandez Jr., Sophia also joined us, and from Strange Investigations, Mr. William Rail returned to the podcast. And we are looking forward to the next podcast, and we'll be going over some of that. But right now, what I'd like to do is kind of give this podcast a proper outro, and that's what you're going to hear right now. So from the newest version of the book, this is starting at page 113 of 234. Mr. Fernandez, Detective Gummert added in his response, I understand my answers are short and to the point, but based on your questions, you have read all of our reports, and there is nothing more to add on my end. If we did not cover it in our reports, then we did not feel it necessary to do so. I have come to the realization that there is nothing I can do. There is nothing I can say or do. Let me reread that sentence. So let me maximize this, if that will work too or not. I don't know if I can make this full screen. That would be kind of cool. Maybe that's asking too much. Oh, well, not what I wanted, but close enough. All right, let's see. I have come to the realization that there is nothing that I can do. I did it again. Take 3. I have come to the realization that there is nothing I can say or do that will ever satisfy the people that believe there is a cover-up and that the family was murdered by the government or agents acting on behalf of the government. I will also never be able to satisfy people's opinions that our department did a poor job investigating this incident, even though most, if not all of those critics, have never spent a day doing what we do. Well, that was one of the reasons I wanted to have Stephen Sanzeri on, because he was a former police officer who did spend a day or so doing this type of stuff, but whatever. And I think that's even more frustrating is the fact that you have all these people who have never spent the day doing what the police do every day. And we did not make the assumption so quickly, so easily, so fast as to what some of these officers did. Now, see, the thing that's really weird is where I can already tell somebody is in his ear. Mason Hendricks, Sean Wright, those cast of characters, possibly somebody's already in Detective Gummert's ear, kind of going over this, and somehow, or just whatever, he's Detective Gummert is watching Facebook, watching all those where looking at the YouTube where everything is like, oh, it had to have been the government, completely discounting all of the other possibilities. And Detective Gummert does not know me or know my view or my thoughts on this. Obviously, if he did, he would probably understand that the government is one of the last theories that I would take seriously. I'm still open to it, but it has nothing to do with, my questions has nothing to do with anything that I was trying to bring up. I was trying to pretty much steer away from any theories as to what may or may not have happened. Just get some clear answers as to why they believe David Crowley did this. So this one this was like I took it as a little jab where he's saying, that I've come to the realization that there is nothing I can say or do that will ever satisfy the people that believe there is a cover-up and that the family was murdered by the government or agents acting on behalf of the government. Now, obviously, he doesn't know exactly where I fall in line with that, and I've gone over that with him as well, because I am not convinced that the government did this or agents acting on behalf of the government, shadow government, whatever you want to say. So he also says, I will never be able to satisfy people's opinions that our department did a poor job investigating this incident, even though most of us have never spent a day doing what we do. So mistakes were made. I would think so. A poor job, that could be, I could see that way. Some people, including myself, would think that a poor job could have been made and probably was made. But it has nothing to do with, government or anything like that. For me, it's just when we look at what they did, what they missed, how quickly they assumed David Crowley was guilty, the lack of evidence to prove David Crowley guilty. I think that's why a lot of us, at least me, let me speak for myself. That's why I believe that they did do a poor job investigating this. Now, the more documentation that I got, the more I could see that it wasn't as bad as I thought. You know, they did investigate this. They did do a lot of work looking into why they thought David Crowley did it. They didn't find anything. So that is not only a poor job investigating, it was a horrible job to come to the conclusion after all of this investigating that David was still guilty. Now, if you want to start there, I can see that. It, makes the most sense to them. That's fine. But 1 year later, 8 months later, after you have all of the evidence and you have the phone records, their financial history, you have everything there, the DNA results, and you see that there really is nothing that ties David to these murders, but you still are going to say that David Crowley is guilty. I think that is a poor job investigating, because you still had time. And maybe they still do. And I hope that they will still think about that and still think, and realize that the case is not closed. It can't be closed right now. And you do not have closure on this case. Anyone who thinks that, well, if we just say David Crowley is guilty, that's going to give us closure. It's not going to give you closure. Not at all. Quite the opposite. You are assisting in a cover-up, because you are covering up what the real truth is. And the real truth is that David Crowley is not guilty. There is nothing that ties him to being guilty. So why are we assuming that David is? Anyone who is assuming and wants to convince other people, in some way, you are part of a cover-up. You're helping cover up what we really know and helping cover up what the truth is. You are not helping the family grieve. You are not helping the people move on. You are only fueling more fire to the BS that has been going on for so many years now. All right, let's keep reading on. So in the physical book, the newest edition, that would be page 97. Now we're going to move on. Okay, page 114 here. I am not sure where you fall in your opinions, Gummert continued, but I would hope we could agree on one point, that the lives lost in that home have greatly affected their families. I think we owe it to their families to move on and let them live in peace. They have suffered enough, and continual discussion of this case serves no purpose. Moving forward, I will no longer answer any other questions regarding this case. Time has come for our department to move on. I wish you the best. The bullets. Based on the firearms report completed May 22, 2015, the gun, Item 1A, fired 6 cartridge casings and 6 bullets. Item 2 is a cartridge casing found at the corner of the east edge of the carpet near the recliner. Item 3 is a cartridge casing found on the east side of the living room hardwood floor, next to a short wooden stool. Item 9 is a cartridge casing found on the south side of the living room carpet. Item 30 is a cartridge casing found on the living room hardwood floor, closest to the south wall. Item 36 is a cartridge casing found inches from David's left hand on the south end of the living room carpet. Item 37 is a cartridge casing found on the west side of the living room carpet next to the couch. The spent cartridges found on the west side of the living room carpet on January 17, 2015 are labeled as Item 42, Item 43, and Item 44. All 3 spent cartridges were found close to the living room couch with hair on them. Test results for all 3 items showed a single source DNA profile matching Kamel, while excluding Rania and David as possible contributors. Item 42 weighed 167.96 grams, contained a blood-like and hair-like substance with expanded damage to the nose of the spent cartridge. Item 43 weighed 179.56 grams and also had a blood-like substance but no hair. The nose of the spent cartridge was damaged and partially exposed. A blood-like substance was also observed on item 44. This spent cartridge weighed 130.24 grams, with its nose listed as damaged. Item 45 is a spent cartridge found in the south wall of the basement. This spent cartridge weighed 173.90 grams. The nose was listed as damaged and partially expanded. Holes were observed in both the area rug and the wood floor underneath the rug, Joe Cooksley reported. Chemical testing of the hole in the wood floor also failed to detect the presence of lead. This bullet traveled into the living room carpet, pierced through the hardwood floor, leaving behind bullet fragments, and then lodged itself into the south wall of the basement. A section of the drywall around the lodged bullet was cut in order to retrieve item 45. When the styrofoam behind the drywall was removed, a bullet was observed, according to Joe Cooksley. A DNA profile was not found on item 45. Additionally, Joe Cooksley discussed running trajectory tests on the spent cartridge with BCA specialist Chris Olson. He didn't feel it was necessary, Cooksley wrote in his notes. It should be noted here that 2 spent cartridges labeled as item 53 and 57 were found by accident on 2 separate occasions, days and weeks after the bodies were removed from the house. The others. Item 31 is labeled as a bullet fragment found near the south edge of the living room carpet. Item 7 is the unspent round compressed into the living room carpet. Several thin hairs covered the live round. Strands of hair and pieces of flesh were found close to this bullet. DNA tests were never performed on item 7. According to BCA forensic scientist Rebecca L. Deanne, BCA crime scene team Joe Cooksley indicated that analysis is not needed on item 7. Once the processing of the crime scene was completed between January 17th and 18th, investigators left the house with 4 spent cartridges instead of 6. Of the 4 bullets recovered from the scene, only 3 had blood on them, only Kamel's blood. Authorities missed 2 bullets when they left the house on January 18th. Those 2 bullets will be covered in detail. On January 20th, 2015, Biotech Emergency Services, the company hired to clean the crime scene, was in the process of removing items from the residence when a mushroom bullet, item 53, rolled out of the living room carpet. This spent cartridge has some white material on the surface, weighed 169.54 grams, and was found with an expanded nose. It should be noted, according to Detective Bone, that the bullet was predominantly flat on the back and was sitting on the front mushroom portion of the bullet. The bullet appeared to be mostly intact at the time of our discovering it. Item 53-1 is a swabbing of item 53. Hairs found on the bullet were labeled as item 53-2. This bullet contained a blood mixture of 2 or more individuals, with the major DNA profile matching Rania. Interestingly, David and Kamel were excluded from being contributors to the newly found bullet. Based on those results, authorities should have been looking for a second DNA profile. Unlike some other results, it is not stated that 99% of the general population can be excluded from contributing to the blood mixture of item 53. Since authorities did not discover the spent round on their own, we will never know where item 53 landed after allegedly killing Rania Crowley. What we know for sure is that item 53 rolled out of the living room carpet on January 20th, 2015. What we still need to know is the source of the missing DNA profile or profiles associated with this bullet. Item 57. On February 17, 2015, investigators were notified about a bullet hole in the living room ceiling. Based on that information, authorities returned to the Crowley residence on February 18th and found a bullet, item 57, in the attic above the living room. The bullet weighed 180.18 grams and is the heaviest of all 6 spent rounds. Like item 45 and item 53, white material was also observed on this spent cartridge. The nose of the bullet was partially expanded. Characteristics of the hole, BCA crime scene lead Joe Cooksley wrote in his report, and its surrounding area indicated that a projectile was traveling generally west to east as it entered the ceiling and exited in the attic. After examining the bullet in the living room ceiling, authorities found item 57 in the attic above the living room near the front door. There was no blood on this bullet, but the nuclear DNA profile matched David Crowley. The DNA profile did not match Kamel or Rania. An email exchange between BCA analyst Catherine Roach and Detective Tommy Booth stated that no one had been charged with committing a double murder-suicide. "Good morning, Catherine," Detective Booth wrote on February 17, 2015 at 8:04 a.m. "Nobody has been charged in this case, so I'm giving you permission to use up some evidence in its entirety for DNA analysis. If you need anything else, please feel free to contact me. Thanks for all your hard work." Attempting to connect item 57 to the alleged murder weapon, authorities compared the bullet recovered to a bullet fragment found in the living room labeled as item 31. Originally, the bullet fragment labeled item 31 was not included in the firearms examinations. I spoke with Joe Cooksley, BCA analyst Lisa Kinsella wrote on April 14, 2015 at 10:14 a.m. regarding item 31 labeled as bullet fragment or fragments. It isn't included in the FA assignment. We discussed that I will add item 31 to the FA assignment to document it and examine it for suitability comparative exams. The bullet fragment labeled item 31 weighed 19.14 grams. The fragment was noted to have a hair-like substance and a torn jacket. The fragment was compared to items 42, 44, 45, 53, and 57, but not to item 43. According to the BCA firearms report, item 57 against item 31 showed the presence of matching features. This means item 1 fired item 31. I'm not sure how that connects item 57 to the gun, but you can look at the laboratory results here. Since item 57 against item 31 showed the presence of matching features, this means that item 1 fired item 31.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are, what city, what state. Just turn this radio down a little bit. I just figured I would invite everybody to once again join us. We will be live. The plan is, if everything goes according to plan, we will be live tomorrow, which will be Thursday at about 12:15 p.m. Pacific time. So make sure you set your reminder, and that will let you know exactly what time it is in your time zone, in your country too, since we have been reaching lots of different countries just with the podcast. I don't know what the YouTube numbers are or the Rumble numbers are or anything like that, but just with the podcast, we're reaching many different countries. So it's always interesting to see that. But tomorrow we are going to continue the discussion, and I want to hear some other people's views on this fake police document. So that will be the goal. I feel like I've kind of said everything that I wanted to say so far. but it will be good to get other people's views and see what they think about this fake document that is tied to the case. And there are people that don't know. Let me try to summarize it as best I can. It does, it takes a little while to kind of process it. It took me a little while to try to process exactly what the heck I'm looking at. So on Tony Floyd's website, there is a one-page document. It's only one page, and it's meant to look like it was created by Apple Valley Police Detective Shane Klokonis. Shane Klokonis has stated in an affidavit that he did not create that document. So then the question obviously is, well, who created it then? Somebody created it, obviously. So if you look on Tony Floyd's website, I think it's crowleycasemurders.neocities.org. I could be wrong, but it's something like that. But if you look on his website, he says that it came from Joe Tomaso, Joe Tomato. So that is the source as far as we know. And so again, that is where we're basically at, is trying to figure out, okay, who created this fake document, acting like they were Detective Shane Klokonis? And then of course the other question is why? This was brought to our attention, to my attention, and Sophia too. This was brought to our attention through a letter from the Apple Valley City Attorney. Now, prior to this letter from the Apple Valley City Attorney, Christine Caselius, I really didn't pay any attention to this one-page fraudulent document because it looks so much like the real 5-page examination report. I thought we were looking at the same thing, but apparently no. Apparently, what it looks like somebody did is they took the top half of the real document and created this letter from Shane Klokonis to Tommy Booth. So that will be interesting too. It'll be, it would be good, and maybe we can, thinking of things to kind of what do we do to follow up on it. Now that Detective Shane Klokonis has stated that he didn't write it, I don't know, maybe it's not even relevant, maybe it's not worth it, or worth Apple Valley's time, but maybe get Tommy Booth to also say that I didn't receive it. So anyways, but that was pretty fascinating information that we just got yesterday. So yesterday morning, the affidavit, it's dated September 20th. And it was sent to us on that same day. At the same time, Sophia and I received it at the same time. So, pretty interesting stuff there. We'll see how all of that pans out. That's where we are with that one. But tomorrow, I'm hoping to have Sophia on, to have Catherine on, to have William Rail on. Maybe Eric Spitfire Wilkinson might join us too. But if anybody else wants to join us, send me a message to thegraystage@gmail.com. If you're part of the group, I'll be more than happy to send you the information. But we are planning to do it live. Sometimes the live thing doesn't work out, but the goal is to do it live. It will be recorded. So if something goes wrong and we're not able to do it live, then we'll just do it. Kind of what I did with the video that I made, where it's pretty much live to tape. So there won't be any edits or anything like that. But I think this show will be a little bit better because I've had time to kind of process what I'm reading here. Not only that, but we'll have some visuals up on the screen, so we'll be able to go through the actual documents and we'll talk about it. I felt like that was one of the things that was lacking in my video, is that you couldn't, I didn't do any screen shares just because of time's sake and everything. So we'll definitely do that this time, and it'll be interesting to see what people think about it. But it just goes to show, it never pays to be shady. It never pays to play games, anything like that. And so I hope Joe Tomaso has learned his lesson. Now, I don't know if he actually created it, but again, according to Tony Floyd,
he is the source. Tommaso is the source. And it seems to be verified. It seems to be verified there. And I think that's all I wanted to say about that for now, obviously. But I'll be curious to get other people's views and thoughts, and we'll kind of discuss that. But you know, the other thing is we do have a source that has been able to kind of shed some clarifications on certain things related to the Crowley case. The source does not want to be named, does not want to be out in public. Is not worried about anything, just doesn't want, this person does not want their name out there. But this source was talking about January 19th and Chris Klein, when Chris Klein's truck was spotted at David Crowley's residence. Now, what the source says is that Chris Klein's car or truck, right, the camo truck, drove by slowly a couple times back and forth by David's house before actually stopping at David's house. I thought that was kind of curious. I thought that was very curious as to why, you know, if you're just there to just do whatever, you know, why kind of slowly drive by a couple times. You just would go there. That kind of was like he was staking it out. The source was not sure if there was multiple people in the car or if it was just Klein. So, but that was one that really stuck out. The source also claimed that on Halloween, David, Kamel, and Rania were at their house. I don't know if they were trick-or-treating or passing out candy, but the source, you know, talked to them and was able to, you know, said nothing. There was nothing weird, nothing strange, or anything like that. And it kind of goes against. I was talking with Dan Hennon about this, and he was like, it kind of goes against the theory that Kamel was a hostage in her own home. It doesn't. This is one more thing. It doesn't appear like there's any truth to that. She was a hostage in her own home. They're walking around freely. They're outside, and they're just acting normal. So that was another thing that the source said. I'm trying to think if there was anything else there. There was a couple other things. I don't have my notes with me, but we'll be covering a little bit more on that. But you know, there's just some more stuff to it, I guess. I wish I could remember off the top of my head some of the other things, but some of the things about David's behavior that is mentioned in the police reports, you know, some of that, there's other sides to it, I guess. It's not really that big of a deal with some of these things. So, but we'll be going over that a little bit more in depth too at some point. But I thought that those were, there was a few other things that stuck out to me, but I can't remember exactly what they were right now, of course. But that was the big one, was that Chris Klein, you know, was kind of driving by slowly, very suspiciously. Maybe that's not the correct word, but it was just kind of, the source found it strange that they would, you know, kind of driving by a couple times before actually stopping there. So that was another thing there, but that's probably all that I can share for right now from that source. There is some more, but again, it's just all background stuff, just kind of some clarifications on certain things of how David was. Nothing abnormal, but he kept to himself, seemingly. And I'll try to pull up those notes here, because I know I'm not really doing a good job at relaying that, but nothing strange, nothing out of the ordinary. Kamel was a very outgoing person. very outgoing, very friendly. Other than that, not too much strange stuff, but we'll go over some of that at a later point. But with this whole thing, this fraudulent document, it's just, it's very troublesome that someone would create that and pass it to anybody, whether you're passing it to just Tony Floyd or to Tony Floyd and other people too, and there's documentation that backs up what Tony is saying too, so don't forget that. So the letter from the Apple Valley City Attorney, again, thank you to whoever did send that in to them, because they didn't know about it. So it was good, whoever sent that in, so that now they do know, and we'll see if they're going to take any other steps towards that. Is this impersonating a police officer? Is one of the questions that came up. Would that qualify as impersonating a police officer? I mean, morally, yes, definitely. Legally, I would also think so, yes. I mean, that's a big deal, right? Why would you even do that, first of all? But what would be the punishment for that? So that'll be another thing that I hope that the city attorney kind of follows up on, because if they don't, then this could happen a second, third time. We don't know. This is the only one that we know about too, and it's only because Tony Floyd has put it on his website, shown the actual document there. So we don't know if there's other documents floating that have been passed around to try to make David look guilty, and that's the thing. That's what the document is there for, right? It is worded very, very weird. First of all, it's from to Tommy from Shane. That's kind of weird. Like that's how detectives talk. I don't know. I mean, I guess I have no idea, but and maybe because we do have some other email exchanges between the detectives and the BCA, et cetera, so maybe that's how they talk. But for someone to put in that much effort to fake a document just shows the desperation that some people have in trying to trick people into thinking David Crowley is guilty. But we know it's a phony document. Apple Valley City Attorney has confirmed that, and they seem to leave the door open. They haven't said, we're no longer discussing this or anything. So that's all public stuff, and anybody can contact them. Contact the Apple Valley City Attorney. In the document on my website, I believe it does have Christine's name, and only do it if you're really serious about it too, but it's definitely something that I plan on following up on. Hopefully maybe we can get them on. Maybe we can get the city attorney on to give a couple statements, a couple quotes or something like that. I think that would be good too. But I'd be willing to help. I don't know how I could help, but if I can, I definitely will. But I do hope that they follow through on that, and that they figure out, and more so to just make sure that people stop. They stop the games. They stop these, the trickery that we continually see from the same cast of characters. So, Joe Tomato needs to respond to it. He needs to say where he got this document from and why he was passing it out. But the document, the fake document itself, you could totally tell it's just meant to make, oh yeah, David's guilty. He had extensive drug use, he wasn't sleeping, etc. So I mean, it's just crazy. But it's not like it's not like any of that proves anything to say, okay, this is what happened. David Crowley, did this. He did the actual killing. It's not there in this. The real document, the 5-page document, you can compare that to that 1-pager, and you can see the big difference. So, it's too bad. It's too bad that someone wanted to create that fake document and then kind of spread that out there. But again, we're thankful to Mr. Tony Floyd for
making that available to the public on his website. That's where I first saw it, and I'm sure that's where many of you first saw it too. I glazed at it, didn't even recognize it until the Apple Valley City attorney sent me that letter. If they wouldn't have, I probably wouldn't have even noticed that there were two documents with the same date, the same header, the same everything at the top. But I would have just thought, okay, maybe that was part that was taken out or something. I don't know. But so again, Tony helps expose these frauds, and we'll see where it goes from there. But I hope they learn their lesson. You know, don't create the fake documents. Your time is better spent on just proving David Crowley guilty. And if you can't do that, then I get it. I understand why you're doing all this trickery and all these games, because that's all you got, and it's an act of desperation. It's what desperate people do. Not people that are really searching for truth, that really want to find out what the truth is. That is just, making things more corrupted. It's corrupting this investigation. It's corrupting this case, and it's needless. And it's disrespectful to David Crowley. It's disrespectful to the family, disrespectful to his real friends, disrespectful to everyone who really cares about this case and wants to find out what the truth is. So they got busted. It happens. You have to admit that, admit what you did, and then suffer the legal consequences of it. So that's pretty much it. So Joe Tomato, if you didn't create it, you should go to the Apple Valley Police and let them know where you got this from. Simple as that. Simple as that. But it was created. It is out there. It is verified that it is a fraudulent document. And of course, it's not surprising at all to many people. It's just it's so unnecessary. Some of these things are just so unnecessary. But again, it's time that is spent in the wrong area. The time with the case should be spent on the case, okay? Not on creating fake documents or playing games or distractions, which again, Tony Floyd's website shows that's exactly what these cast of characters are doing. That's their goal. That's what they do, is to create the distractions to play games, white lies, whatever you want to call it. It has nothing to do with truth. So that's why the Justice for David Crowley and Family Facebook group, we are the ones who are seeking truth and getting to the truth. And each day that goes by, there's a little more truth that comes out. So, it's not a big focus for me. The fraudulent document, it is a big deal, but it's not my primary focus. Obviously, the primary focus is still getting the case reopened. If that helps get the case reopened, awesome. I mean, maybe it will. Maybe it'll lead us down that path too, which would be great, because that is the real goal here. But I do believe it's going to show more and more people that, there really is a fake group out there who is just playing all of these games and is not really interested in providing, a comprehensive video or an explanation, something to explain why David Crowley is guilty. I've made 3 now. One was 2 minutes, one was 3 minutes, another one was 17 minutes, and it all pretty much shows you why David Crowley is not guilty. So, and it can't be debated. It just can't. So if you're going to debate something, debate that video. That's all I got for you. I don't have time for haters. I don't have time for trolls. For years I've been stating that I block people. It's not anything new. If you don't know that I block people, then you're not paying attention. I put it in my last video. I put it in many videos. I've shared screenshots of people that have created fake accounts, and I've blocked all of those too, and I will continue to, because their purpose is to distract and to get people to react, and that's
Okay, fine. If that's what you want to do. That's how you want to spend your life. You know, wasting your time. Nothing off my shoulder. I'll respond to whatever I want to, but you know, I'm not really interested in feeding trolls. So let the trolls eat cake, and they can figure it out for themselves. But really, it only brings more eyes to us. So I would not concern myself too much with it. It would be laughable if it wasn't so sad, you know, just sad human beings, miserable people. That's what they do, you know. People with no real moral compass, no positivity in life. So, whatever. That's what happens. God's gonna get you. And you see it. We saw it firsthand here. Busted. Right? Completely busted with the fake document. And hopefully it's the last. Hopefully people have learned their lesson and they won't do it again. Or else, you know, there's always going to be legal consequences to things like that. And not just legal consequences, but it's just more, it just shows a lot of people the shadiness of people who are trying to desperately prove to you that David Crowley is guilty without any evidence or anything like that. They know they can't prove it. And so they just play all these weird games and stuff to just kind of, you know, I don't know, to cast doubt, I guess. I think I was like, why would somebody do this? You know, why? That's why, you know, we were discussing the document, and hopefully we'll discuss the why. We can theorize on it. I don't know why. I don't understand why. I don't understand why somebody would do that. But again, it just shows the level of stupidity in some people to do that, to take a document like that. And, you know, I don't get it. I don't get it, folks. But again, join us tomorrow, and that will be Thursday. Go to the channel. Well, if you're watching this, you're probably already on the channel. So set the reminder. I will put the notification up there soon, so make sure that you do that. And join us live. Join us live in the live chat room. And like I said, if you want to call in, if you want to be a part of the show, we'll make that a part of it too. So I think there's a few people that did want to be a part of it. So I will reach out to those people hopefully today and let them know that, hey, we are going to go live tomorrow. And if you want to join in and give your thoughts on this or thoughts on anything else related to the case, great. Happy to have you. So God bless you all. And until then, until tomorrow, around 12:15 p.m. Pacific time, I'm Greg Fernandez Jr., and God bless you all.
Welcome to episode number 18, The Gray Stage book written by Greg Fernandez Jr. Today we're going to be covering Chapter 9, The Suspicious Activity. There's a section in the Suspicious Activity chapter called In and Out, and we'll be covering that today. It is on pages in the hard copy book, in the actual book 77, 78, and 79. My name is Dan Hennon, and we'll be joined here with the author Greg Fernandez Jr. Also, we've got Sophia, Stephen, and Catherine on the line for today's episode. How's everyone doing today?
Doing good.
Great, thanks, guys.
Well, we've got an interesting chapter. You know, this suspicious activity is a very interesting chapter. And then I like the way, Greg, that you broke down this chapter into easily digestible parts. In today's section, although it's only 2.5 pages, there's a lot in there. And looking forward to this episode. There's a lot of information here, and I think when I read a couple of paragraphs at a time, we'll be able to stop and kind of analyze it a little bit and take a deeper dive into it, because there's a lot here going on behind the scenes that the reader needs to understand as well. And I think these episodes are a good companion to the book when someone's reading the book. This really sheds additional light.
Absolutely.
So it starts off with the subtitle In and Out. This is chapter 9 in the book called Suspicious Activity. Continuing on. It's important to know who was in the Crowley residence on January 19th, 2015, and why. And so this is just picking up, you know, the bodies were found on the 17th. And so previously in this chapter, on the previous episode that we did for the podcast, we covered about what went on the 19th. And this is, just remember, this is 2 days
later. This is that Monday now. And so who was in the house? Continuing on, Chris Klein claimed he was in the house with David's dad and brother. David's dad told Detective McKnight that was not true. Authorities respond by never following up on those conflicting statements. So right there, we're one paragraph in, and we've got conflicting stories. One can call them lies or half-truths or whatever they are, but it's mixed up. Continuing on, another friend of David Crowley, Mason Hendricks, was one of several people in the house with Chris Klein on January 19th, 2015. Hendricks also worked with David on the Gray State Project. Hendricks once told me the reason why the public received so little information a year after the deaths was because the Department of Homeland Security had to sign off on everything. Let's stop there. What's the Department of Homeland Security have to do with any of this is the first question. Maybe Stephen could answer this as a former law enforcement officer.
His call got dropped again.
It did. Okay, gotcha.
Well,
That's DHS right there. That's what it has to do. That's what's going on here, Dan.
I mean, just his statement alone saying that the DHS had to sign off on a Crowley case is beyond laughable. I mean, it's ludicrous, it's ridiculous, and I'm pretty sure DHS has a whole lot better things to do.
And the thing to keep in mind here is that it's a local, this was a local, big time local case and potentially state case that drew the attention, but it was never in the federal realm, even though many of us suspected that it did have some impacts in the federal government, but certainly not the DHS. Now, the thing about Mason Hendricks is that he doesn't follow this statement up by saying, I'm just kidding, or this is a joke, or I'm just kind of exaggerating a little bit. This is actually what he said. He said this. And so, once again, it gets back into the question of why are the Gray State guys who worked on the project, why are they involved with the investigation at all? Why are they involved with whatever was going on with the investigation? And they kept seeming to come out of the woodwork with information that led us, people looking at the case, as if they were kind of on the leading edge. They were hearing the first words. They were hearing the breaking news story about the case before things went public. They were always getting inside information, was the sense that they left us with. Do we know why that would be, other than just the obvious reasons of trying to... I know we're dealing with narcissistic people to begin with, and everyone else is less than them, but they always gave us the feeling that, well, you guys don't know. You aren't in the know. You're not familiar with the case. You're not on the front lines with this investigation. So that's the feeling I always seem to get dealing with comments like this.
How did that not raise red flags with Apple Valley? I mean, with them staying in constant contact like that and asking questions about how the case is going. I mean, anybody who watches a murder series or anything like that, they know that those who are offering help in the case and wanting to know every step of the way what's going on are usually the suspects.
So do you guys think, too, that, and I'll just jump in here quick, then I'll bounce off for a minute. The law enforcement angle, I could see that, and we're going to touch on that in the next paragraph. It mentions, maybe the FBI was involved. That at least makes sense. But Department of Homeland Security means to me that they're trying to drop the seed and plant the seed that this is a terroristic, possibly have with the honor killing, or with David and the Muslim angle is what he was trying to plant the seed. Is that right, or is that by some kind of design, or am I just off base there? Go ahead.
Well, to me, the whole DHS thing, it contradicts the whole murder-suicide. Because why would they even be involved in that? There were no bombs. There was nothing terroristic that David supposedly had done at the crime scene. I mean, there's nothing.
But wasn't there very beginning, wasn't there insinuations that there was explosives or other things in the house, maybe booby trapped? That's another angle that they tried to push, and maybe that's why he used this phrase, for instance, that David may have booby trapped the house.
Sean Wright is the one who said that if I kept looking at this case, that the DHS was going to put a microscope on me. So you have two different people here, Hendricks and Sean Wright, both talking about the DHS. That's pretty weird.
And it's
That
just
is
total
suspicious
deflection.
activity.
Yeah, they're trying to deflect. They're trying to take the focus off of themselves and then try to get you afraid so then you don't look or ask questions. And there's absolutely nothing I see, no reason at all in anything I see that, come on, the Department of Homeland Security, are you kidding me? They're not going to get involved in it. That would be ludicrous.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
But it's an intimidation thing, is it not, as far as scaring us off?
Attempt, yeah, I'd say that.
Yeah, that's kind of what they thought, whereas we took that and almost laughed it off. But at this point, they still weren't, they didn't know who they were dealing with here. That, we knew, we've been around the block before, all of us on different cases. And so we're like, well, that's not how things work. So I still think at this point, when these comments were made to Greg, is that they still were under the impression that we were novice, armchair individuals, not knowing the big picture here is what I think they thought. They really tried to use the intimidation right away and bullying, and that's, they found out very fast that wasn't going to work.
Yep.
Now we got to go back to the beginning where we're still on January 19th. Why was anyone in the house at all?
Yeah, they
except
should.
for the cleaners.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I don't even interrupt, but it's like the arsonist. He sits in the back of the crowd and watches the building burn down. He's now a fire watcher. He's gonna, it's the same with these guys. But the friction they're giving you guys, it was intimidation, and you guys aren't buying it. And DHS is not gonna they don't even care.
I agree.
Are there any reasons why the DHS would be involved? I mean, what would it take, I guess, for the DHS to be involved in something like this?
Terrorism, terrorist act.
So there again, it's almost like Mason's, puts his foot in his mouth when he says that, because if this is a murder-suicide, there is no terrorism per se.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think he tried to create that angle to get everyone, scared, as far as who did this, and it was some kind of nasty thing, and then realized, oops, that doesn't agree with my narrative. So it's too late to walk that back then. So I don't know.
I also wonder if there's any value in me contacting the DHS and getting a clear statement from them.
Well, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah, it won't hurt. Try it.
Worst they say is no, but it's interesting.
Just don't mention Philip Haney.
Right.
On the other side of California, right?
Yeah.
They knew that they had people that were giving them different stories, and I never understood why they didn't follow up on it.
They already had their suspect. Why would they even bother to follow up on it?
I mean, isn't lying to police, isn't that something? I mean, you have to be under oath maybe or something, but lying to police, obstructing a case, I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's nothing legally wrong with that, but still lying, more lies. A lot of people in this case have lied, and here we have more proof of people lying. The police know all this. It doesn't bother them, I guess.
Yeah, no, Stephen was former law enforcement. Yeah, go ahead, Stephen.
Oh, I mean, it could be obstruction if they want to go that way, but the more we look at it, the more they're all involved in it. So they're not going to do that.
And Stephen, as a former police officer, what comes to mind when you start hearing lies or discrepancies in someone's statement or statements or something like that? It raises your antenna. Isn't that what you're taught to begin with? That there shouldn't be any lies. There may be misstatements, but outright lies like this. I was in the house with these two people, and they said, no, that's not true. As a police officer, if you're wearing that cap as a detective, even though you may have already have your suspect and the case is closed, that would still raise your eyebrow as to what would cause someone to lie. Why would you make that statement like that? Do you think their ears perked up on that, or do you think they didn't even care?
You know what? I don't know. I think they don't care. It's way past. I mean, this is a conspiracy. You know, we're not finding the answers. We have mutilation. We have a sloppy crime scene. We have Freemasons and everything else involved. And, you know, and you guys are pushing it. And these guys, are the friction you're getting from these other fellas, right, and Hendricks and everything else. I mean, you know, walk away. They're not walking away. Every time you go at them, they're going to rebut it or whatever. And it's I think it's past their 15 minutes of fame, maybe too. You know what I mean? I mean, there's some other motives involved with these guys. They have stars, you know, in their eyes. I mean, this was a good project. So there's a lot of unanswered questions, but I really think it's coming together.
Continuing on, it says, Detective Gummert stated the DHS was not involved in the investigation. Hendricks also tried to tell me the FBI was involved. Again, Detective Gummert stated that was not true. And so we've got, you know, previously when the show started, we talked about Detective McKnight, and now we got Detective Gummert. So we're not getting these discrepancies with the same officer each time. They're with different people, and they know lies or misinformation is being sent out or seeded or planted the seeds. And so it's interesting how many of the detectives here are involved with just coming face to face with the actual lies that were being done in a case like this. It wasn't just one bad guy or one person that something slipped through the cracks, but it's over and over a multitude of the entire staff. Now it goes on to say that Mason Hendricks stated he and a group of others searched the house and the attic on January 19th, looking for anything that would help them understand why David was guilty. Where do we want to jump off on this one?
Well, they're going to go collect whatever evidence they left for something behind. I mean, you know.
So if they're in the attic, on January 19th, they don't see any bullet there.
Touche.
At one point, Mason Hendricks told me that, and this is Dan, he told me that they were there kind of cleaning things up and getting things ready for the family. Sidra, maybe the Alam family, organizing some of the belongings that Kamel had. You know, they were trying to organize things. He didn't mention anything about being in the attic and searching for stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, those are two separate days.
Off on two separate times during the house, but I got them backed in on the date. And once again, they used two different reasons why we're in the house, and it turned out to be the same day, which relates back to that 911 call from neighbors when the cleaners weren't done or even maybe not even started yet. The question remains, why were they in the house at all? Whether they're gathering things or whether they're cleaning or searching for things. Any correspondence we had with those individuals on this, we kept hearing that they were all in mourning and in a state of emotional and not to get involved with this because they're so busy trying to just gather this, understand it all. But yeah, we find out later that they were in the house doing things, and they weren't mourning at all, as far as I know.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it. And the fact that they go right away and they're saying that they're trying to find a reason why David was guilty. Oh, woe is them. And it's just not the behavior of people who, if that was your friend, how many of us would, just find it and take it upon ourselves to walk into our friend's house that hasn't even been cleaned up yet just so we can start our own investigation when the police haven't just barely begun theirs, and then turn around and condemn others who are trying to say, hey, this stuff isn't adding up. They want to condemn us and attack us because we're looking at this and saying, hey, this isn't right. but then they want us to feel sorry for them because, oh, they went into the house the next day or 2 days later. It's just insane.
Well, it's like what you said earlier. It's all just deflection.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing I was going to add.
Go ahead.
The other thing I was going to add is when I first confronted Mason with this, I said the cleaners weren't done yet, and it was still, one could call it a biohazard scene.
Yep.
The smell would have been so bad. There could have been, maggots, insects in the house. From this is 3 weeks of decay, is what was the story back then. I said, how can you go in there? What was it like? And I said, what kind of masks did you use when you entered the house? I said, Mason, you know how bad the house would have smelt? And you were in there fooling around. I said, the hazardous team or the cleaning crew hasn't even been there yet to essentially defumigate, and it would have been a rotting corpses in that house. And so I got him stumbled there when he couldn't answer the fact of what kind of headgear or mask was he wearing or oxygen supply when he went into that house. So alluded to, they had nothing on. They wore nothing.
And I've awful. Oh, I'm sorry. Hey, Dan, I've seen a few bodies after a couple of weeks, and usually it was like spring towards summer, but it was, in the Bay Area, and it's not super hot. And you can't even, it's usually somebody calls from upstairs in an apartment after 2 weeks. That's how bad it is. And you go in there with Vicks under your nose, and let me tell you something, you hit it on the nose. Absolutely.
It's horrendous.
The sense of being incredible. Oh, my God, yeah.
It really is, and decomp is a smell you just never forget, and it's not something that the average person will be able to walk in and just go, oh, wow, okay, look, it kind of smells funny. It is so overpowering. And here's the thing is, we know that these bodies were not there for 3 weeks, but the rate of decay, especially in the facial areas and stuff, because it was open cavities, is going to be a little bit faster in those. So it would have been a very pungent smell. And, I don't, the guy's so full of hot air. Oh, sorry.
So it goes back to the concept in my mind is he needed to have something on over his face, which he said he didn't. But he said that they were in there organizing and cleaning and getting prepared for whatever. And then also the line that he gave here was they were investigating and searching. Well, either one of those, they never mentioned having anything on as far as a mask or having trouble to breathe or how horrendous it was. None of that was even mentioned. And so that's where my antenna was raised right from the beginning. Mm-hmm. That and the fact that the professional cleaners hadn't even come through there.
God.
So all of it, on its face, none of this makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. No, not one bit of it.
But he also helps prove our point here too, is that they were in the house, they were looking for things, and guess what they found to prove David guilty? Absolutely nothing.
Yep.
That's right.
Guys, maybe also they went in there to plant more evidence, hoping the cops might come back in. You know what I mean? There's also that. Maybe evidence to defer them. These guys got egos. They could have, as I said, it's like a fire watcher, man. These guys' egos, they might want to play this little cat and mouse game. But does that, A, tell me that they have protection at a higher level, or B, that they're just egomaniacs?
Yeah.
And they might have went in to plan something too.
Yeah, there's two good reasons why that really makes sense, is because at that point, January 19th, they haven't found two very important bullets. They haven't found the bullet that ties to Rania, and they haven't found the bullet that ties to David. And we could even say they really never found the bullet that ties to David's blood. We definitely know that.
Right.
But
exactly.
So, it's hard to argue at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know what? In that bullet, that one bullet they found didn't even look like it hit anything.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
So did they shoot that into something else and then just put it in there?
Continuing on the top of page 78, it says that Hendricks claimed he walked in the house with at least 2 other people on that day. Hendricks looked up at the ceiling and immediately saw the bullet hole. Quote, I looked over to another friend of ours Hendricks told me over the phone. Continuing on, and I was like, they couldn't effing see the hole right there? Question mark. End quote. So this is, now he admits to being in the house on the 19th, and then they said they saw the bullet hole, and they can't believe the police missed it. So
how did they know that the...
Well, that's the very first question, that when they announced that, when they were posting back and forth on our page on the Justice group, was we saw that they missed a bullet hole, and it was so amazing. And most of us asked them, how do you know what the investigators saw or didn't see? How do you know they missed anything? How do you know what they missed? How do you know what they saw? And so right then it got them backed into a corner, because how do you get out of that? How did you know that what they saw and what they didn't see? And so that was them trying to plant the seed that there was a missing hole, that's something the police missed, meaning that they know that it wasn't there on the 17th. Is what that's what I took from it.
Yep.
Well, at the same time, throwing the Apple Valley Police Department under the bus. Now, this is the 19th, and the guys at this point were getting prepared to do an interview with Fox 9 News regarding this case. Remember, they were so busy grieving that they didn't have time to do anything. I think it was the very next day is when they did the interview that aired on TV a couple nights later. That was either the 20th or the 21st. So they were getting prepped to do that at the same time, trying to plant the seed here of a boat hole all of a sudden. So their wheels were turning. They were thinking nonstop about how to cover all the different angles of their tracks, I think.
Is this the same interview that they did where they turned around and did the photo op afterwards? The photo that is posted in the group?
The smiling guy's photo?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that was the day that photo was taken, yes.
Ah, interesting.
And do you know who these guys remind me of? Their body language? Chris Watts.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't buy it at all. I don't buy anything they have to say. They do not have the right response. Their body's not responding. Their face is not responding in a way a real grieving friend would. Just like Chris Watts.
And see,
the Mason interview. I'm sorry. The Mason interview. I looked at his eyes and such. It was like, there was almost hatred and jealousy, and David did it. He just went nuts, and he still looks like he's so confirmed on that, and.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the Danny August Mason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The one he did with Ben Swan.
I think so. The one he's profiled off the camera there,
where he couldn't sit still and he was all shifty.
You can probably notice he never did any interviews after that, as far as I know.
Hey, you know what, guys? Though, let's take Eagle and look into it. And I know that it was Dan Mason that didn't want to sign the NDA on this. I read the excuses in your book and everything, and it's all horse crap. But these egos, they're so driven. And I just say I got to look at some security behind that, which, like I said, brings it up a level. But these guys are so brazen. It amazes me in a case like this.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't know why they just didn't stay silent the whole time. Why are they out there doing this, talking about this stuff? They know people are going to be like, well, wait a minute. Nothing has really been done yet. What are you guys talking about? What do you guys know or claim to know that everybody else doesn't know on January 19th?
Here's the other thing, too. I pull cases all the time. I just went to the DA on a case. He won't tell me anything but two things: who's involved and what the weapon was. That's all I need. I don't need anything else. But, the cops don't talk to people. This doesn't get into it doesn't get into the paper. The reports, it's confidential could be for months. Mm-hmm. It's not public information. The call to the houses, what's in the report, investigations, and these guys are coming up with. It's like they took the whole thing over. Like you're saying, and the information they're getting should never have been exposed. And that's what's amazing to me is that these guys, and every move that one guy makes, they all make. They're all in it together.
Yeah, and it's so typical of narcissists. They want to inject themselves into something, especially those who are involved in a particular crime. They have to. Their ego doesn't let them do anything else, or narcissism. So they will inject themselves and then say stuff to make themselves sound important, and yet the police never thought twice to go, hey, wait a second, your behavior's not matching what we're seeing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, at that point, I do fault the ABPD, but, you know, again, at the same time, I give them a break because this had been their first, well, there were 3 murders, but the first murder case they had handled in over 6 or 7 years at this point. So they probably were like newbies once again. And I think
You know what?
the guys took advantage.
I know, but Catherine, is the only thing related to the Marshall case. You know, there's 3 bodies there too. You know, and it was a shadow ops, a black ops hit, and this and that. And like I said, the difference between the 2 homicides is one sloppy and one was surgical. That's it. I mean, everything else. You know, so where's the motive? Where does it stop? In Calvert County, you know how my reputation up there for 30 years is they've always been corrupt. You know, for a short time I don't think they were, but more or less, yeah, all those counties. And they cover up. An agency comes in like that, and you know, the CIA or whoever it is, Homeland Security, DHS, they're gonna take it over, and Calvert is gonna go with the narrative. And we talked about Kevin Raggio, and I knew Kevin Raggio, you know, and this was all covered up. So same here, Apple Valley. You know, when they got these knuckleheads running around wrecking crime scenes and stuff, and finding bullets and all sorts of crap. I mean, this is so abnormal. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, it is.
Yeah.
Continuing on, it says, how did Hendricks know the police missed the bullet hole? More so, why didn't Hendricks or anyone else in the house with him inform authorities about the bullet hole? Especially if they knew that police were unaware. See, that's another thing. We never get them saying, boy, we found this bullet hole, and, you know, 5 minutes later when I called police, you know, this and that happened. They never contacted the police. They never contacted anyone. They were just so jumping up and down, excited that they found something that the police failed at. They're willing to throw them under the bus for this, while at the same time being set up for potential interviews as the close family friends of these guys, of the victims, and how sombering this whole thing was, and what an emotional wreck they all are. Well, it's just bizarre. Now, Hendricks was wrong when he claimed David's blood was on the bullet. He was wrong when he said it was proven that item 57 came from David's gun. He was wrong when he said David's fingerprints were on the gun. He was wrong when he stated the Christmas tree was blocking the bullet hole in the living room ceiling on January 17th, 2015. Hendricks was wrong when he stated DHS and FBI had to sign off before the public could get information from authorities. So there's a lot there to digest. Greg, do you want to go over that a little bit in your book?
Yeah,
as far as all the locations that he was wrong.
Yeah, he was wrong in all these things. This is what he's telling me. So when I first talked to him, I know we have the text between me and Hendricks, and we definitely need to do a show on that and go over that and start posting a lot of that stuff. But this paragraph here is pretty much the summary of what I grabbed from a lot of the stuff that he told me while we were texting, and a lot of stuff that he told me while we were talking. And so I had noted all of these things, and to see if, okay, well, if they had all of this, then these are all things that would prove David guilty. So if the police would have said, yeah, we have David's blood on this bullet. Yeah, we have David's, we know that item 57 came from David's gun. Yeah, we know we have David's fingerprints here. His fingerprints were there. There was a few other places. Hendricks said that the fingerprints were on the laptop, that there were footprints all over that house, that there were bombs, that the police called bomb squad. There's a few other lies, a few other things that Hendricks told me that all ended up not to be true. And at that point, it's like, well, okay, first of all, why should I take anything that you say seriously? And that's why a lot of the stuff I ended up taking out of this book, because it's like, well, I don't want to get into the he said, she said thing. It's like, dude, you're wrong. You are completely wrong. The facts prove you wrong. So I just wanted to kind of keep it as a very summary, because that could have probably been 20, 30 pages just in that that one section there. of his quotes and of him trying to explain to me why David was guilty. So if this is his reasoning why David was guilty, he was wrong on that, and then he's helped prove our point that David isn't guilty, and at that point Hendricks should know better.
So there's a difference that we bring up a lot of times in various cases like this. There's two different words. One is misinformation, and one is disinformation. And the only difference between those two in a case like this is the word intent. Misinformation is someone got something wrong. He thought it was right and it wasn't right. Disinformation is saying something purposely to sidetrack or to derail the conversation or derail the investigation on purpose. And so right here, Greg, you've got 5, 6, 7 instances of Mason Hendricks, what I call using disinformation on purpose to lead you down a wrong track. And did he ever come back and say that, oh, he got it wrong, or it was misinformation, or he apologized for getting it wrong?
No.
Did he ever do anything like that? Because you got him busted here on all these cases directly from the evidence from the case, the
Right.
police report.
No, because by the time that we had gotten all of the data that proved it, I had stopped talking to him, because I don't talk with people that lie to me. If you want to tell me your story, if you want to contact me and tell me what happened with David, if you were there, if you have some information, et cetera, I'll give you that time. I gave a lot of these goons that time to tell me that. But once they started lying to me, then I'm just going to document it and I'm going to call you out on it. And that's pretty much all that happened there. So by the time that we actually got that stuff, and if he ever does want to do something live, if Hendricks ever, has the courage to actually, do something live where we actually go through these things that we're talking about here, he is more than welcome to contact me. He can go to thegraystage@gmail.com and he can send me something there, and he can counter any of the stuff that we're saying here. This is all factual stuff that he said that he has been proven wrong on. So I would love for him to come out and say, you know what, I was wrong. You guys are right, because that's what the truth is.
Yeah, it's very interesting, the whole thing, because he was coming at you, hot and heavy with all these phrases from the beginning, and then once the police report and the evidence and everything came out, we got it, and then was able to go through and dissect each one of these, and really leaves us with the question of, did he just happen to get it wrong, or was this done on purpose to lead you down the wrong path? So, at one point he says it's obvious that the police missed the hole. Anyone could see the hole. And then he says, well, the Christmas tree was in the way, so maybe that's why they missed it. And so he makes contradictory statements like that as well. David's blood was on the bullet that killed him. Well, his DNA was, but not his blood, and the evidence certainly showed that. So, but once again, it's him inserting himself into the case where a normal person wouldn't do that.
Right, because he talks doublespeak about the cops. So in some of our texts, he's calling the cops pigs and how they messed up and how his sloppumentary is much better than what all of the cops did. Then on the other side, he's also saying that the cops did a great job and they solved this case and David is guilty and you all are basically wrong and crazy. So it's a lot of doublespeak. So I think you're right. It started out, for me, it started out as misinformation, and once I started looking at the factual data, at the documents that anybody right now can go and find, you can go and check this stuff out, then it's like, okay, either he didn't know or he's basically lying. And either way, at that point, he's not really helping me to get to the bottom of this case. It's just throwing sand in my eyes, pretty much.
Correct. Anything else on that one?
Anyone got anything on those lies? Have you guys? I don't know if you guys know. Do you guys know that these goons have lied about this stuff, or is this all new information to you?
No, I've known about it since we started researching this case.
Well, I did not know about the DHS and the FBI, and so that's why it cracks me up. And the only thing I would like to add here is that, in my point of view and in my opinion, this was him purposefully putting out disinformation. There are far too many lies. Everything he says was a lie and a distraction and a detraction. So the fact that he stated all of this to get people to go into a different direction was purposefully done. So to me, that makes it disinformation, in my opinion.
Right. Which I think you're right on that, because he was kind of hoping that I would take whatever he was saying and just put it out there, and let it, share it in our group at that time. Which it's like, well, you're more than welcome to do that yourself. If you're going to feed me false stuff, if you're going to feed me these things, I'm not just going to put that out there. I'm going to actually fact check it, do some real fact checking on it, and I'm going to hold on to this data until I can prove you right or prove you wrong. And there's just been a lot of that we haven't really gotten time to shine a spotlight on these guys. The way that they claimed they were going to shine, that the DHS was going to shine a big spotlight on us. It was really more about Dan Hinnon shining a spotlight on him, shining a spotlight on Thomas Lapp, and somehow I was going to get involved in that spotlight. I can only say that I know the same things that these goons contacted me with. I'm sure there are many people out there that are listening to this. They probably contacted you too and said something very similar.
Oh yeah,
and I think, he contacted you too, right? He contacted a lot of people.
Yep.
Starts out nice, right? He's your best
Oh,
friend.
no, he wasn't nice to me at all. He wasn't nice to you. He was rude from the get-go, and I'm just like, hey, dude, you don't know me. Don't talk to me like that. If you want to talk like a decent human, we can have a discussion. Otherwise, don't bother me. And, then he pulled it back for a second, but then all of a sudden it's like, you guys don't know what you're doing. You're da-da-da-da-da, knock it off. And I'm like, don't tell me what to do. Dude, you don't even know me. Don't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And it was Mason Hendricks also that told me directly that it was Sidra, Comel's sister, that set up that GoFundMe to raise $6 million for her ailing mother. When we know that Dan probably set that up himself. And so he wanted to steer that away to make it look like it was done in good faith as well. And so, once again, I've got those screenshots, and I saved the correspondence, and it's all very interesting. Now, for the newer listeners out there, and I think Stephen could benefit from this as well, because he's fairly new into the case. The reason they talk about the DHS and the FBI signing off is because 3 or 4 months into this investigation, we were clamoring that why isn't this investigation done? What needs to be researched? And then it got to be 6 and 7 months along, and they said there's nothing. We're not done yet. We kept hearing this. And then it got to be 9, 10 months along, and they said the investigation we're still wrapping up. And what we said was, if this is all nice and tied off in a nice little bow and this was an easy investigation, what's taking so long? And so it came to be the January, the year later, that the investigation was done. It took a full year. And now looking at some of the details in the reports, they were waiting on a lot of things to come back and whatnot. But that's when we kept pushing, is when Mason Hendricks responded back by, it needs to have federal sign-off before they can do it, before it can be released to the public. And so that's when those kind of things came in. Then he said, the FBI has got to sign off on all this. And so it was using it to placate us, to say, just hang tight. It's more of a stall tactic because it's not ready yet. It's not done. The reports and everything isn't done. It's not complete yet. But we were saying, why wouldn't a case like this, the investigation, be wrapped up in a month or two or 3 months? Certainly not 6 months.
Exactly.
And so I wrote my first article when this was 9 months old by saying, how can this possibly take this long when we have all the information you need? Official narrative, that is. I said, here, I went through my whole list when I wrote that first article about the case. 9 months in, we still didn't know anything. And so all that was going on those first 9 months was banter back and forth between people and members of the group and characters like this. But then once that investigation got done, all this started making more sense. But that's where that came from. He was using it as an excuse that they needed to sign off on everything.
Right. Well, the way you explain it, Dan, and I am catching up with that part of it today, was very interesting, like Catherine said about a DHS and the feds. But what does he have a connection there? I mean, if he was comfortable saying that, blurting that out, as brazen as he is, maybe they'll throw him under the bus now. But at that time, he felt he was untouchable, and if he acted like that, I mean, like you say, it's not normal for even narcissists and stuff. But this is a serious murder case. This is, like I said, maybe a house fire or something. And I mean, he comes out that brazen, and those are some of his first statements. He's comfortable stating that. I mean, think that. Yeah, maybe these guys were the hit guys. It does go up higher. Apple Valley taking that long for a case like this. At the Philip Marshall case, they closed that in Greg, less than a month, right?
Yeah. And they actually had a whole summary. They gave us a whole summary of everything that they did.
Exactly. These guys here. Dan, you're absolutely right. I mean, Apple Valley is like they're just playing dumb. They're playing dumb, acting dumb. I'm sorry, acting dumb. I mean, it's Dan. There's no. The questions are stellar and the answers are, feeble.
Yeah, because there was also times that we were in communication with the detectives at the time, or at least Gummert was the lead detective, and I would shoot him an email every couple of months and just saying, what is the status with the investigation? And they would respond. He'd say, we're probably looking at another month before we get it finalized. And then the next time I asked, he said, it's going to be another month or another few more weeks to go. We're putting the finishing touches on all this. And what we found out later was when all this was done, they had already been filming their Fox 9 investigative report with Tom Lydon, and that was already shot and done and in the can, ready to go live the night they released everything. So they were doing all this other media and social media type of things behind the scenes. So they were ready to go when the news broke, when this is all released, that they had the bases covered on everything. And so that's, I think, also what was taking so long in this. But this was back when we were still in good communication. Greg was talking to Gummert, I was, and things like that. So we were getting email responses, from those guys. They just kept delaying it. We thought maybe it's a stall tactic because at that point we just still didn't know if it was a cover-up or what the story was. Because in some of these cases they never get concluded, and therefore you can never ask questions or file a FOIA until the case is complete. So we thought at this point, those of us who were right on the case from the very beginning thought they're never going to finish this case, so they can never allow us to do a FOIA request on anything to get any of the information.
Sure.
And so once they did, a year later, then we started getting the data that we needed. But at first, we didn't know if we were hemming and hawing, thinking, are they being legit? They're trying to, wrap this up, or are we going to be hearing this for the next 15 years that they're still wrapping it up and it's still open? But sometimes they'll keep cases open like that on purpose, so the public can't get any information.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yep.
And it's also interesting that when. Go ahead, Steve.
Oh, I just say, how long did the Warren report take, right?
Right.
I mean, really.
Yeah, and there's still a lot of questions on that one today.
Well, yeah, but anyway, but no, that's a long time, Dan.
Yeah. And even after we did get, because remember, at first, all that we got was 94 pages of police reports, and then we got 464 photos. That was it. We didn't get any DNA stuff.